Shabanova is ready. Okay. Dear colleagues, please take your seats and please note that this meeting is being recorded and is being broadcast on the OSCE's PA social media platforms and website. This afternoon, we will consider the final supplementary item on international justice, humanitarian law, and human rights as the foundations of lasting peace and security in the OSCE region. We will also begin our open general debate held under the theme of this annual session, International Law and Shared Principles, Foundations for Security and Cooperation in the OSCE area. Let me inform all members that the speakers list are now closed, and I will not add members to this speaker list. Why? Approximately 70 members have registered to speak in the open general debate. So please, please, please don't oblige me to call to an off order, and please respect the 2 minutes time. Don't forget, almost 70 speakers. I expect also our open general debate to continue tomorrow. To frame these debates, we are joined today, I think it's an honor for us. We are joined today by Ms. Tomoko Akane, President of the International Criminal Court, and by Mr. Bosnian Sredlek, I hope I pronounced it correctly, Chair of the Board on Relations with Partners of Eurojust. Thank you very much for being with us today, and I ask you an applause for them. A revised draft agenda for this meeting has been distributed. Are there any objections? So if there are not, the agenda is adopted. And I would like to start first telling you that over the past few days, we have repeatedly raised the issue of the 3 OSCE officials unjustly detained in Russia, Vadim Golda, Maxim Petrov, and Dmitry Shabanov. We will keep their fate high on our political agenda, and to underscore this commitment, I now invite Dmitry's wife, Margarita Shabanova, to address this plenary.
Thank you and good afternoon. Thank you, President Pons. Distinguished members of Parliament, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Margarita, and I am a wife who has been waiting for releasing of my beloved husband, my Dima Dmitro Shabanov, for over 4 years with daily pain. My husband, of whom I'm proud to be the wife, my Dima, was detained on April 15, 2022. While doing his job for the OSCE Special Monitoring Mission to Ukraine in Lugansk, occupied territory by the Russian Federation, held incommunicado for 3 months. Then in September the same year, unrecognized court sentenced him and his colleagues Maxim Petrov to 13 years for high treason. No evidence, no due process, no transparency, just a verdict, delivered like theater, for crimes that were never real. The first news I had on my husband was a video circulated by the Russian Federation in July 2022. I saw my beloved Dima emaciated with hollow cheeks and his t-shirt was torn. That is how I, as a wife, learned that my Dima is still alive. In 2025, he was deported to a penal colony in Omsk, deep in Siberia, Russia, further from any hope of return. My Dima joined the SMM OSCE in 2016 and continued his work in April 2022. He was doing his work with dedication and loyalty. So were Maxim Petrov and Vadim Golda. They were no spies. They were staff of this organization, doing exactly that 57 participating states mandated them. Their detention is a violation of international law, of human dignity, and everything of the OSCE claims to protect. We are grateful for the statement and calls for their release and ongoing efforts to secure it. Statements and efforts matter, but they have not brought my husband home. So I ask you, what has truly been done to bring them home and what tools remain unused? Because if staff of the international organization can be seized and held for the years with no consequence, the system meant to protect them is broken. And let me be precise about why this matters beyond on my family. The situation may look differently today, but the responsibility is the same. Participating states and delegation of this assembly have a power of actively exploring and contributing to solution to secure the release of Dima, Maxim, and Vadim. They are the OSCE officials, and they should drive greater resolve, not become a reason to leave this to others. Today is Dima's name. Tomorrow it could be the name of staff member serving on any mission in any country under the flag of this organization. How could we speak about future of the OSCE mission if my husband and his colleagues are still in this unjust detention? Three things I ask of every person of this room. Speak their names. Dmitro Shabanov, Maxim Petrov, and Vadim Golda. In your parliaments, in your all available channels. Stand with us in restoring the basic human rights of our loved ones, the right to liberty, due process, dignity. Use every diplomatic, political, and legal tool available to you. Not with one statement, not with one resolution. Do not stop using them until they are home. The OSCE and its participating states must stand with its people. This is not symbolic, and I came here for your voice. I hope I can count on it. And please help me to see my husband to be home finally, safely back at the same Maxim and Vadim. Thank you.
Thank you, Margareta. I think it was very important to give voice to the persons who have no voice. And again, thank you for your fight. And now we will now turn to our guest speakers. Ms. Tomoko Akane is the president of the International Criminal Court. Ms. Akane was nominated by her native Japan and assumed office as judge in March 2018. She was appointed as the sixth president of the ICC in March 2024. From 2016 until joining the ICC, she served as Japan's ambassador for International Justice Cooperation. During her career, she assumed posts at different levels of the Japanese justice system. The ICC is the first and only permanent international court with jurisdiction to prosecute individuals for the international crimes of genocide, crimes against humanity, war crimes, and the crime of aggression. President Akane, it's an honor, and the floor is yours. Thank you very much. Please.
Thank you very much for your kind introduction. Honorable President Pons, honorable members of the OSCE Parliamentary Assembly, ladies and gentlemen, it is a true honor to be here today, and I'd like to thank Dr. Voss, President of the Dutch Senate, and Mr. von Kampen, President of the Dutch House of Representatives, for inviting me. As members of parliament in charge of drafting and passing laws, you know the importance of the rule of law. Just like the national legal order is of critical importance, international law is the basis for international legal order and is fundamental to global peace and security. The international rule of law means that all states are bound by rules and legal obligations that they agree to implement. It ensures that disputes are resolved through dialogue, negotiation, and by the decisions of legal institutions, including courts, which must be of last resort, rather than through coercion or by force. Without this framework, international relations would be governed by uncertainty and instability. As members of Parliament, you have a responsibility to uphold these principles. Your support for international treaties, your commitment to implementing international obligations under domestic law, and your engagement with multilateral institutions all contribute to a stronger and more effective international legal order. At a time when geopolitical tensions are increasing and international norms are under pressure, your leadership is more important than ever. The strength of the international rule of law ultimately depends on the willingness of states to respect and defend it. Every time a nation honors its commitments, resolves disputes peacefully, or supports international accountability, it reinforces a system that benefits humanity as a whole. Conversely, every violation weakens the trust upon which international cooperation depends. But the international rule of law cannot stand without independent judicial institutions that implement the law through the decisions of impartial judges. The International Criminal Court is one of these independent judicial institutions that provides a mechanism to address grave violations of international criminal law. By exercising its jurisdiction over individuals accused of committing the most serious crimes of concern to the international community. And by doing so, the International Criminal Court offers hope to victims of those international crimes. Honorable members, the International Criminal Court was created in 1998 because states were mindful that during the 20th century, millions of people, including children, women, and men, have been victims of unimaginable atrocities that deeply shock the conscience of humanity, and recognized that such grave crimes threaten the peace, security, and well-being of the world. They were determined to put an end to impunity for the perpetrators of the most serious crimes of concern to the international community as a whole. The ICC is operating all over the world without fear and favor to serve the promise made under the Rome Statute to deliver justice to victims in line with its judicial mandate. The court is active from Philippines to Libya, from Venezuela to Mali, from Uganda to Afghanistan. The court has never been so busy. In the past few months alone, the court saw several significant developments in its judicial and prosecutorial work. On 23 April 2026, the pretrial chamber unanimously confirmed all the charges against the former president of Philippines, Mr. Rodrigo Duterte, and the trial is scheduled to open on 30th November this year. This is the first trial for the ICC in a situation arising from the Asia-Pacific region. In the El Hishri case, in the situation of Libya, the confirmation of charges hearing ended on 21st May. If the charges are confirmed, it would be the first trial arising from the situation in Libya. This clearly demonstrates the court's legitimacy and relevance, as well as the importance of its community. On 28 April 2026, the trial chamber delivered its reparation order for victims in the case of Al-Hassan relating to the situation in Mali. Reparations orders are also expected in the Yekatom and Gaisona case in the context of the situation in Central African Republic, and in the Abdurrahman case relating to the situation in Darfur, Sudan. In the Said case, in the context of the situation in Central African Republic, the closing statements took place in November 2025, and the trial judgment is expected to be issued later this year. Just 1 year ago, on 8th July 2025, the pre-trial chamber issued warrants of arrest in the situation in Afghanistan, as there are reasonable grounds to believe that the suspects bear, among others, responsibility for ordering, inducing, or soliciting the crime against humanity or persecution on gender grounds against girls and women. Pretrial and trial chambers do their judicial work across situations, issuing numerous other warrants of arrest, although many of them remain under seal, and several decisions. As a result, the appeal chamber continues to be seized of multiple final appeals and interlocutory appeals that are of significance. This achievement would not have been possible without the support and the cooperation of state parties, and I welcome the decision by Hungary to withdraw its notification withdrawal on 29 May 2026 that was only possible thanks to the support of its parliament. Despite the unprecedented challenges, including coercive measures and others against the elected officials of the court, the court faces a lot of challenges, as I said. We will not bend to undue pressure that seeks to undermine the independence of the court or attempts to twist independent judges' decisions. The variety of court work only shows its relevance in today's world and the importance of giving victims the justice they deserve. It reflects the call from present and future generations for justice that can be achieved only through accountability and the respect for international law and shared principles that unite all people by common bonds. We pledge that the court will continue to strive for its mandate. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, dear President. And now we turn to Mr. Osham Skrelets, who is the chair of the Board on Relations with partners of Eurojust. Mr. Skrelets is the representative of the Slovenian judiciary in Eurojust and served as the vice president between 2020 and 2024. Before joining Eurojust, he was Director General at the Supreme State Prosecutor's Office of the Republic of Slovenia. Eurojust is the European Union Agency for Criminal Justice Cooperation. Mr. Skrelets, you have the floor.
Honorable President Pons, Honorable Judge Akane, dear representatives of the members of the OSCE, dear colleagues, a very good afternoon. And let me first thank you for your kind invitation to participate to this OSCE Plenary Assembly, especially on a topic as important as international law and the principles we all share. It is truly a great honor to be with you here today and to represent Eurojust. For those perhaps less familiar, let me clarify that Eurojust is a European Union's agency for judicial cooperation in criminal matters, and we operate right across the street. So when later on you exit these premises, you will see the White Tower. This is where our headquarters are stationed in the City of Peace and Justice in The Hague. We started our operations in 22, so some 25 years ago. And since then, a lot has happened. The European Union and its members have grown so much closer in terms of judicial cooperation. And I believe this is no small part thanks also to the work we do. Last year, for instance, our agency supported 14,000 cases of cross-border investigations. These cases are happening mainly inside of the European Union, but also outside of the European Union, in an area, in states, which largely also coincides with a membership of the members of the OSCE. We see ourselves as a house of prosecutors, investigators, and judges, where all of those come from many countries, different countries, to meet and discuss cooperation, both in strategic and operational real-life cases. And the latter part is actually our core business, real investigations, real judicial cases. Operational cooperation, working together in the real investigations and designing optimal prosecutorial strategies so that justice can be done, regardless of where the crime has been committed or where it has been tried. To do this, we have to rely on the wide network of relations with countries. So much so that we consider ourselves to be a large house. Not only a European house, but truly an international one, where prosecutors and judges come together to meet and to discuss in full respect of our different legal systems, different cultures, and different traditions. Right now, no less than 39 countries are permanently represented at Eurojust, which includes, of course, member states of the EU, but just as much our partner countries. Countries such as United States, United Kingdom, Ukraine, to name but few. I say all this to make clear that Eurojust is not a political organization. We stand for operational judicial cooperation for which countries bring cases to us on voluntary basis. Now to our shared principles and international law. In doing all this operational work, this inevitably means that we exist to help ensure international law and the rule of law in many countries and to help see that the justice gets done. And this is not just a technicality. There was a time when in the EU, the rule of law was a principle, an idea to work towards. But this has changed. It has changed with the Lisbon Treaty in 2009. Then the rule of law became much more. it became not just principle, but a value on which the European Union is built. At the same time, however, and against the backdrop of volatile world, international justice systems like International Criminal Court see their legitimacy and independence challenged. We have seen increasing pressures and efforts to undermine their work. I believe it is important to keep in mind that these attacks are not just aimed at the court, but rather they challenge the very principles that no one is above the law. In the 21st century, no one institution or one organization can address the challenges of organized crime and crime in general alone. This is no longer possible to be done in isolation. This may be particularly true for the core international crimes such as war crimes. Only by reinforcing partnerships can we effectively protect the principles of international law we all adhere to. And this is where our agency, Eurojust, come together with many organizations, certainly also including non-governmental organizations, to play an important role. In the wake of the war in Ukraine, for instance, the European legislator entrusted us with setting up of what is now called the Core International Crimes Evidence Database, or CSED in short. Across a landscape in which information is scattered around different jurisdictions and organizations, this is a repository that brings together evidence of alleged war crimes. Centralizing this information in our CSED at the EU level enables analysis and investigators to better establish the intent and systemic nature of crimes we have seen, and eventually to hold those responsible accountable in the court. A second pillar of our work on upholding international law concerns the ICPA, or in short, which is short for International Center for the Prosecution Against the Crime of Aggression. The ICPA is a judicial hub embedded in Eurojust to support national investigations into crime of aggression related to the war in Ukraine, which are taking place in member states. Thanks to the ICPA, independent prosecutors from different countries are able to work together in the same location on a daily basis and to exchange evidence in a fast and efficient manner. And we look forward and hope that in the near future we will be able to expand these new approaches also to other types of crime, such as perhaps organized crime and terrorism, to mention but a few. Dear ladies and gentlemen, we all know that upholding international law is an effort that never finishes. And to hang in, it needs to be a collective effort. It requires determination, it requires perseverance, it requires a good degree of patience, and importantly, trust. Trust in the system and how it operates. Where there cannot be trust, societies will ultimately, yet often slowly, crumble. As the old Latin adagio has it, ubi societas, ibi jus. Where there is society, there is law, there must be law. For all these reasons, I believe that prosecutors and judges have a crucial role to play. A role meant to be as guardians of international law, therefore as guardians of the system and of the principles we all once agreed to adhere to. Thank you very much for your kind attention.
Thank you, and we really appreciate you joining us today. And since it is time for you to leave, and we're going to have the speeches of the potential new vice presidents. Thank you once more, Judge Akane and Mr. Skelets, for sharing your insights with us. And we're going to do a short break to leave you the podium, and then we restart with interventions of the candidates for the vice presidencies that we have to vote tomorrow. Thank you. So now we will give the candidates for Vice President an opportunity to speak before the Assembly. We have 6 speeches, so I would like to ask you that you speak for no more than 2 minutes. So the candidates will speak in the alphabetical order. Maria Karapetyan from Armenia, Ms. Lucia Tasser Perlin from Slovenia, Monsieur Thomas Porte from France, Mr. Mikita Poturayev from Ukraine, Mr. Paweł Lis from Poland, Mr. John Whitingale from the United Kingdom, and Ms. Monika Saikova from North Macedonia. Please, it's important, please note that early voting for members who have an avoidable obligation began yesterday afternoon and continues today until 6 p.m. in the table office. Members must request early voting in writing to the table office before 5:30 today. Voting will otherwise take place tomorrow in the Onyx room between 8:30 and 10:30. Before we proceed, I would also like to congratulate those colleagues elected by general committees this morning. Really, congratulations to all. So I first call Maria Karapetyan from Armenia. And Maria, please, you have the floor for 2 minutes. Thank you.
Honorable President Pons, dear colleagues, since the establishment of this Parliamentary Assembly, and certainly since I joined it in 2019, my country, Armenia, and the region it is in, the South Caucasus, was always featured in our yearly declarations as a context of conflict. This year, the Hague Declaration, for the first time, will not mention either Armenia or Azerbaijan as a context of conflict, and this reflects a profound transformation. We have established peace in our region and are working towards greater cooperation. After 8 years in this Parliamentary Assembly, I stand in front of you asking for an opportunity to serve it as Vice President, to repay, through dedicated service, all of the support that you have offered me throughout these years. I serve in the Foreign Affairs Committee in my national parliament, and I know from experience that the solutions that we have found for our region are not replicable that easily for other conflict contexts. But I can offer with humility one thought. When nations are at war, they sacrifice the most important, human lives. And it is the responsibility of political leaders to make sure that those sacrifices do not turn into endless cycles of loss, but when the conditions permit, they become the foundation for peace, of course, under international law and national sovereignty. Dear colleagues, I'm a member of the second committee in this Parliamentary Assembly, and I would like to offer a thought on that dimension as well. I hear our nations speak a lot about what we call strategic autonomy, diversification of supply chains, and greater economic resilience, and I think it is important for our Parliamentary Assembly to make sure that as we go on these paths, we deepen cooperation and avoid fragmentation. The growing strategic importance of my region, the South Caucasus and Central Asia, is something that is offering new opportunities for our entire region, and I will be very happy to contribute to that direction of work. I have also served in the Human Rights Committee in my Parliamentary Assembly, and I know that none of our work will actually be sustainable unless it is based on human dignity, democratic institutions, and the rule of law. The uniqueness of our Parliamentary Assembly is that it knows no equals when it comes to election observation missions, and I would be proud to continue strengthening that work as Vice President as well. If entrusted with your confidence, I pledge to serve with openness, with impartiality, and with dedication. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Maria. And now the floor is for Lucia Tasser Perlin. And I remember, Lucia, that 2 minutes means 2 minutes. So thank you very much.
Thank you for the word. Dear colleagues, My name is Lucia Tacer-Perlin, and I am a member of the National Assembly of Slovenia. In the past year, I've also had the honor of serving as Special Representative for Youth Engagement at the OSCE PA. And today, I'm standing in front of you as the candidate for Vice President. What are the two main priorities that I would focus on if given this opportunity? The first one, making our assembly even closer to the people that it is supposed to serve. What do I mean by this? We have some good examples already taking place. Within the network of young parliamentarians, for example, we have been now for the third year conducting workshops directly with young people that are informing the resolutions that we submit to the Assembly. And a similar initiative has been launched within the Committee for Countering Terrorism with school dialogues. I think we can do even more, and I think this kind of work strengthens our legitimacy. Second priority is about making the promises that we agree on into a reality for our countries and our assembly. I think we can do more to review the commitments that we have made and what has been done in practice. For example, if we committed to making national action plans and several countries have adopted them in the past year, I think it is good that that is something that is widely shared, that we know about it and we promote it in our countries, in our parliaments, because again, I think this is a mechanism that reinforces the value of this organization and of parliamentary diplomacy. So I'm standing here today asking for your vote and promising that if given the opportunity, I will be open for feedback and criticism, because I think only with dialogue we are able to really find the best solutions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lucia. And now, Thomas Porte, vous avez la parole.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Chers collègues, je m'appelle Thomas Porte et je suis député et membre du Parlement français et membre de cette organisation depuis 3 ans. Et au moment où je m'adresse à vous, et nos débats le montrent depuis plusieurs jours, le monde est traversé par des guerres, par des crises et par le piétinement du droit international. Depuis Kiev, où la Russie mène une guerre d'agression, à Gaza, où le peuple palestinien subit un génocide, en passant par l'Iran, le Liban, le Venezuela, la République démocratique du Congo, partout, le droit international est piétiné, les peuples sont massacrés. Et à l'heure où certains voudraient faire de la loi du plus fort le nouvel ordre mondial, je considère que notre organisation a le devoir de maintenir partout et tout le temps le drapeau de la paix et du droit international. Et ça a été dit par la présidente, notamment de la CPI, nous avons la responsabilité ici de soutenir les institutions de droit international que sont l'OSCE, l'ONU, la CIJ et la CPI. Ces institutions, certes imparfaites, nous considérons que nous devons parfois aller plus loin et plus vite, mais elles demeurent aujourd'hui l'unique espace de dialogue, un espoir pour des millions de personnes à travers le monde et un barrage aux tyrannies et à la barbarie. C'est ici que se construit et se prépare la paix de demain. Je suis aussi candidat car je suis convaincu que notre Assemblée, avec ses missions parlementaires, ses espaces de dialogue, est un outil qui demain permettra de préserver la sécurité et de continuer à la faire vivre dans l'espace de l'OSCE, mais aussi à travers l'ensemble du monde. Je suis candidat car ma génération n'a plus le temps d'attendre sur les questions climatiques, la question des droits des femmes, la question des minorités. Nous avons la responsabilité politique de mener des travaux et de redonner vie à cette institution de manière plus efficace, de faire sortir en dehors des murs les décisions que nous prenons, les faire connaître, parce qu'elles suscitent, je crois, aussi de l'espoir. Et pour terminer, je crois que l'OSCE doit continuer à écrire une histoire européenne et mondiale de paix. Et je vais citer Étienne de la Boétie qui disait « Les tyrans ne sont grands que parce que nous sommes à genoux ». Notre Assemblée doit se tenir en permanence debout. Les peuples du monde ont besoin d'une voix forte contre les seigneurs de guerre générale et le royaume de la loi du plus fort. Ce mandat, je le mettrai au service de cette organisation, au service de la paix, au service du droit international et évidemment à votre service. Merci.
Thank you, Ms. Porte. Now the floor is for Mikita Potorayev. Mikita, you have the floor for 2 minutes.
Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, when we were elected to Ukrainian parliament, the war in my country was going on for 5 years already, although a lot of European politicians and even state leaders didn't want even to hear the word war, and that it was war of Russia against Ukraine. When I was elected as vice president, full-scale invasion in my country already was for 1 year. Our organization was established to guarantee and to strengthen security and cooperation in Europe. And of course, serving in the first committee of our PA, I would like to work mostly on security reasons, but in fact, I'm Vice President of War. We started with collecting information and delivering it to you colleagues of what is happening on front lines and inside Ukraine. Now we are sharing with you our experience that we would never like to have if to have goodwill. It's not experience that I would wish to any one of you. But still we are sharing. We shared with you our experience in informational wars, in special informational operations of Russia against your countries, about Ukrainian new Miltech and defense model, about civilian detainees, Ukrainian kidnapped children, and unfortunately we have to continue because war is not over, war is going on. But I hope, colleagues, that you, if you will give me your trust and re-elect me, maybe in one happy day, sooner than later, I will be able to be Vice President of Cooperation. Cooperation for restoring Ukraine altogether, renewing Ukraine altogether, together with you. I hope and pray that this day of peace and cooperation will come to Europe and to my country. Thank you.
Thank you very much, dear Mikita. And now Mr. Paweł Slits from Poland has the floor.
Mr. President, dear colleagues, my name is Paweł Ślis and I come from Poland. To many of you, it's simply a more or less known country in Central Europe. But to me, it is a country shaped by a painful history that has taught us a crucial lesson. We must fight for justice, for security, and for our values every single day, because no one guarantees them forever. We recently saw a tragic reminder of this across in our eastern border. When war broke out in Ukraine, Poland didn't debate what was a political convenient. Millions of women and children fleeing bombs did not end up in refugee camps, but they were welcomed in our homes. Standing by those in need is our identity. This is a spirit that shaped my career. More than a decade as a defense attorney taught me that behind every legal provision stands a human being. I learned to fight for citizens to the very end. Today, as a chairman of the Justice and Human Rights Committee in Polish Parliament, I continue fighting for people. My goal is restoring trust in the justice system. Despite fierce debates, I granted everyone equal voice. Fair play and transparency are my foundation of democracy. As a candidate to vice president, I bring the same approach, which our region is tasted as never before. We cannot settle for declaration and opaque language. We must firmly defend freedom, the rule of law, and human dignity. My name is Paweł Ślis. I ask for your support. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Paweł. And now Mr. John Whitingale from the United Kingdom has the floor. John, you have the floor for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, I am honoured to be standing for the position of one of your vice presidents. Unlike some of the other candidates, I can't claim to be a young member of Parliament, except perhaps in heart. I have served in the UK Parliament for 34 years. I now sit on the Foreign Affairs Committee, and I've been 3 times a minister in the UK government, where I had responsibility for media, culture and digital technology. I've been a member of this assembly for since 2018, except for the time when I was in government, and I was leader before the change in government in the UK. I do believe that the OSCE is still, if anything, even more relevant today. And my focus as a vice president will be particularly on 2 areas. The first is support for Ukraine and to raise awareness of the threat that Russia poses not just to Ukraine, but to all the countries in the OSCE. I've visited Ukraine many times. I observed for the OSCE 3 elections there, which resulted in the election of President Zelensky and his party. And I saw the enthusiasm of the people there, and I'm proud to hold the Order of Merit of Ukraine and the Honorary Diploma of Ukraine, rather. I've also spoken out about the hybrid war that Russia is waging against us, and the 3rd badge of honor I hold is to have been sanctioned by the Russian Federation. But I also chair the Media Freedom Group in the UK Parliament. I set up the UK Committee on the Safety of Journalists, and that too is an essential part of the values and principles on which the OSCE was founded. And I'm really delighted that there has been such a focus on media freedom in the course of our assembly over these last few days. Those are the issues which I believe are really important still and which I wish to promote as a vice president, and I ask for your support. Thank you.
Thank you, John, and for sure that to be in politics, you must be always young. So, thank you. And now, last but not least, Monica Thajkova, you have the floor for 2 minutes from North Macedonia.
Thank you. Dear colleagues, I'm coming from the Republic of North Macedonia. Being part of this assembly, it is a privilege, but it also means taking responsibility to serve every delegation with fairness, professionalism, and dedication. I come from a country that knows how difficult dialogue can be, but at the same time, how essential it is and how much courage and patience it takes. Since 2021, I'm fully active in the work of the Parliamentary Assembly throughout attending sessions, meetings, and I lost count how many times I just packed my suitcase to serve on election observation missions. Last year, I was honored to serve as a head of the election observation mission in Kyrgyzstan, and previously I was a special representative on youth. I do believe that democracy is built not only throughout resolutions, but with fully engagement and being present on the ground. Our responsibility as politicians is not to choose whom we will speak to, but to keep the dialogue alive among those who remain committed to the OSCE principles, core values, and international law. Beyond Parliament, I'm also leading with a party in my country. So through this, I've learned how to manage different perspectives, but also how to bring people together and how to make big consensuses. The fact that I have the support from different political parties in my parliament, it doesn't mean that they want to get rid of me to be less in the parliament, in my national parliament, or maybe yes, but I do believe that it is because they know that I work with fairness and respect with everyone. So I will continue work within this assembly with openness, dedication, and being present and on time. So that's why I ask for your support. Thank you.
So thank you very much to all the candidates. I think it's the first time that we do this exercise with the vice presidents. We have done it before with the presidents. So thank you very much to all, and good luck for tomorrow. So we will now proceed with the consideration of the supplementary item on international justice, humanitarian law, and human rights as the foundations of lasting peace and security in the OSCE region, which I have proposed. So in accordance with Rule 7.2, I have asked Vice President Gabor Hadju to chair this agenda item. Dear colleague, you're going to chair now, and I'm going to take the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. I will take over. Dear colleagues, I remind the members that under Rule 21, this supplementary item has been referred directly to plenary. The vote that will be taken this afternoon is therefore final. This item will not be reopened for adoption tomorrow. Now I will give the floor to President Pons to present this supplementary item. Mr. President, please take the floor.
So thank you very much, dear Vice President, dear colleague. I think it's an honor to present this supplementary item. I submitted, I had support of many colleagues, but I think we are in the city of justice, of international law, and I think it could be the supplementary item of the whole Parliamentary Assembly. And I would like to say that this text is, above all, about reaffirming the principles that unite us as participating states. It is firmly rooted in the commitments we have all undertaken through the Helsinki Final Act and the body of OSCE principles that have guided this Assembly for decades. At a time when our region continues to face war, instability, and profound human suffering, respect for international humanitarian law and international human rights law is not an absolute legal concept. It is the minimum standards that protect civilians, prisoners, families, journalists, humanitarian workers, and all those caught in conflict. Without respect for these rules, there can be no lasting peace, no accountability, and no genuine security. The resolution speaks clearly about the Russian Federation's war of aggression against Ukraine. It reaffirms our Assembly's consistent support for Ukraine's sovereignty, independence, and territorial integrity within its internationally recognized borders. It condemns violations of international law, supports ongoing accountability efforts, and calls for the human treatment of detainees, the protection of civilians, and continued efforts to bring justice to victims. This text also gives attention to those who are too often overlooked, the families of victims of unlawful killings and enforced disappearances. Their right to know the truth, to recover the remains of their loved ones, to obtain justice, and to receive reparation is firmly grounded in international law. Recognizing these rights strengthens the rule of law and helps prevent future abuses. Beyond Ukraine, the resolution further reaffirms principles that should command broad support across this Assembly: the protection of civilians, freedom of expression, media freedom, support for civil society and human rights defenders, independent investigations into serious violations, accountability, and the meaningful participation of women in peace and public life. The text also addresses other situations where respect for international law remains essential. It does so from a consistent position, calling on all parties to comply with international humanitarian law, to protect civilians, to facilitate humanitarian assistance, to pursue dialogue, and to avoid further escalation. These are not partisan positions, they are obligations derived from international law and principles that this Assembly has repeatedly endorsed. So I therefore encourage all delegations to support this supplementary item, and by doing so, we reaffirm the values on which this Assembly was built and send a clear message that respect for international law remains the strongest foundation for peace, security, and stability through the OSCE region. Thank you.
Thank you, President Pons, for your presentation. I will now open a debate on this supplementary item. I call first Mr. Mahmacho Guzoda, Head of Delegation of Tajikistan. The next speaker will be Mr. Nicholas Shamkaradze of Georgia.
Огромное спасибо, господин председатель, уважаемый коллеги. Современный этап развития международных отношений характеризуется нарастанием системных вызовов, включая ослабление доверия и многосторонним институтам, эрозии норм международного права и рост гуманитарной уязвимости. В этих условиях ключевые значения приобретает укрепление основного и правил международного порядка и, безусловно, приверженность фундаментальных принципам ОБСЕ. Республика Таджикистан последовательно исходит из того, что верховенство права, суверенное равенство государства, неприменение силы и мире урегулирования споров являются неотделимыми основами устойчивой безопасности в пространстве ОБСЕ. В этом контексте гуманитарное измерение ОБСЕ приобретает особую значимость как в пространстве, где право человека, демократическое развитие и верховенство права должны оставаться взаимосвязанными и равнозначными приоритетами. Таджикистан убежден, что одной из ключевых предпосылок устойчивого развития является повышение правовой грамотности и правовой культуры общества. Это не только инструмент укрепления институтов, но и важный элемент предотвращения социальных рисков и гуманитарных кризисов. В этой связи мы выражаем признательность государству-участникам за поддержку инициативы Республики Таджикистан о провозглашении 2027 года Международным годом правовой грамотности, направленной на укрепление правовой осведомленности, расширение доступа к правовой информации, формирование более устойчивости, ответственности и инклюзивных обществ. В завершение подтверждаем готовность Республики Таджикистан и к дальнейшему укреплению роли ОБСЕ как инклюзивной платформы безопасности, диалога и сотрудничества. Благодарю за внимание.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Nicholas Shamkaradze will take the floor. Ms. Özgül Saki from Turkey will follow.
Thank you very much, Chair. I want to express grave concern about Article 9 of the supplementary item, where Georgia is mentioned in line of Moscow mechanism and together with Belarus. I think just for the audience to know, I have spoken about this at the committee, but the Moscow mechanism invocation was done by the minority of states, and many OSCE participating states did not support this initiative, including Spain, Mr. President. And the document did not find any evidence of the facts that are mentioned here. The document just found out that there were allegations of about the facts that are mentioned, but there was no evidence found, and the document was compiled by a single expert who visited Georgia only for 72 hours, and I had the pleasure of meeting her, and we talked about European integration, we talked about higher education reform, we talked about sanctions against Russia, but we didn't talk about human rights. And you know that human rights, whenever Moscow mechanism is invoked, there is a serious breach of human rights. Therefore, I would urge you to delete word Georgia from this paragraph. And on paragraph 24, I also am concerned that this paragraph does not mention the fact that there were attacks on state institutions, as it was many times stated by the Special Representative on South Caucasus and also during your recent visit to Georgia. Therefore, I believe that for objectivity, this should be also inserted here, that it expresses concern over restrictive legislation and also over attacks against state institutions. And finally, when you speak about calling for prompt investigation,
I have to inform you that the investigation is already launched and several perpetrators have already been brought to justice. So I think for the objectivity of this draft resolution, these points should be reflected in this resolution. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Dear colleagues, I have to remind you that the time limit is 2 minutes. Now I will call Ms. Özgül Saki from Turkey and Mr. Thomas Port from France will follow. Ms. Özgül Saki, you have the floor.
Teşekkürler. Burada 3 gündür insan hakları, barış, savaş suçları üzerine konuşuyoruz. Ama bugün ve yarın Ankara'da NATO toplantısında yeni savaş planları yapılıyor. Ben delegasyona şöyle bir şey öneriyorum. Diyorum ki önümüzdeki toplantılarda savaşın sonuçları üzerine konuştuğumuz kadar savaşın nedenleri üzerine, savaştan hangi ülkeler, hangi devletler çıkar sağlıyor, bunun üzerine konuşalım. Ayrıca gündemden çıkarttığımız Filistin önergesini gündeme alalım ve farklı coğrafyalarda, Orta Doğu'da dahil farklı coğrafyalarda olanlarla Ukrayna'daki diğerlerini ilişkili biçimde tartışalım ki sahici sonuçlar alabilelim diyorum. Teşekkür ediyorum.
Teşekkür ederim. Mr. Thomas Port from France, Ms. Anna Bilotti from Italy will follow. Mr. Port, you have the floor.
Merci.
Ms. Özgür, excuse me for a second, could you? Thank you so much. Mr. Port.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Je remercie le Président Pons pour ce point additionnel que nous examinons, qui doit réaffirmer les engagements que nous avons pris conjointement pour garantir au peuple leur souveraineté et leur intégrité territoriale. Il est essentiel parce qu'il nous rappelle que le droit international et les droits humains sont notre seul guide pour garantir la paix. Il est d'autant plus crucial de le réaffirmer au moment où les dirigeants autoritaires tentent d'imposer la loi du plus fort au profit de prédations impérialistes. Cet affrontement entre deux ordres mondiaux nous concerne au premier plan. Le droit international n'est effectif que s'il s'applique partout pour tous et pour toutes. Si nous ne tenons pas à ce principe, la justice internationale s'effondre et n'a plus de valeur. J'ai entendu plusieurs fois dans le débat des derniers jours que les massacres au Moyen-Orient et le génocide à Gaza ne nous touchaient qu'indirectement parce que hors de la zone OSCE. Soyons réalistes, l'Europe est déjà prise dans les guerres entre les empires. Israël, Émirats arabes unis, Bahreïn, Soudan, Maroc, Serbie, Kosovo, Corée du Nord, Inde, Pakistan, Rwanda, Congo, Arménie, Azerbaïdjan, Cambodge, Thaïlande, Égypte, Éthiopie et évidemment Palestine. Voilà les pays dans lesquels des accords ou des pourparlers de paix se sont engagés au prix d'exploitation des terres, de vente d'armes, d'investissement dans les infrastructures, d'accaparement des minerais et d'accords commerciaux d'exclusivité pour les médiateurs depuis 2017. Nous devons réaffirmer que ni la paix, ni les États ne sont à vendre. Ces quelques 30 pays recouvrent une large partie du globe. Chacun des États membres de cette Assemblée est concerné au premier plan par leur situation. Aux pays membres dont la souveraineté a ou est menacée, je veux dire ici toute ma solidarité ferme et déterminée. Nous devons œuvrer ensemble à une désescalade. Je veux rappeler que tolérer des abus de droit international et de droits humains, là-bas, c'est pulvériser la solidarité internationale partout. Comment avoir une efficacité quand nous condamnons ici de manière légitime la guerre menée par la Russie contre l'Ukraine, quand nous ne prenons pas de sanctions contre celles et ceux qui massacrent les peuples en Palestine et au Liban? Rappelons-nous que la justice internationale dépend de notre capacité à intervenir pour le respect du droit international partout, tout le temps, pour tous et pour toutes. Merci.
Merci beaucoup. Ms. Anna Bilotti from Italy will take the floor. Ms. Anka Hopsu from Finland will follow. Please, Ms. Bilotti.
Gentilissimi tutti, sono grata all'Assemblea OSCE per avermi dato la possibilità di ascoltare un'autorità come la Presidente della Corte Penale Internazionale e riconoscere pubblicamente a questo organismo di incarnare la coscienza dei popoli laddove i governi sono stati inerti o peggio codardi. Partendo da questo presupposto, trovo uno sfregio istituzionale espungere dal dibattito di questa Assemblea che si tiene all'Aia, sede di questo baluardo della giustizia, il tema dei diritti umani in Palestina. Cosa è cambiato da quando un anno fa a Porto veniva approvato il mio tema per il riconoscimento dello Stato di Palestina? È successo che l'ONU ha sancito che le azioni militari israeliane a Gaza costituiscono genocidio, evidenziando che i bambini sono stati deliberatamente presi di mira e uccisi in un numero senza precedenti. Davanti a questo dato sarebbe stato un atto dovuto, cari tutti 57 paesi OSCE, discutere della necessità di sanzioni allo Stato di Israele, perché il diritto internazionale è o non è. E affrontare questo tema è fondamentale, come affermare che quanto sta accadendo tra Israele, Palestina e Libano non ci riguarda e prima ancora non occuparcene, prima ancora che miope, è irresponsabile ed inconcepibile. Grazie.
Grazie. Ms. Inka Hopsu from Finland will take the floor. Ms. Sara Conti from San Marino will follow. Ms. Hopsu, please take the floor.
Mr. President, thank you for the important resolution on international justice, humanitarian law, and human rights as foundations of lasting peace and security. I strongly support the text. International law was established by sovereign states so that the rules would be the same for all of us and that all human rights violations should be properly and equally addressed. That's why it is really a shame that we will not have a separate discussion on the situation in Palestine, as a severe humanitarian crisis persists in Gaza despite of fragile ceasefire. Tensions have further escalated also in the West Bank and East Jerusalem following Israel's approval of the establishment of 13 new settlements. Several international human rights organizations and the UN have also reported widespread mistreatment of Palestinian prisoners in Israeli prisons. The latest news concerns the collapsed health of Dr. Hussan Abu Safia, abducted by Israel. He has been held without charge since December 24. I call for an immediate release of him and all other arbitrarily detained Palestinian health workers. Gaza's health system has largely collapsed and is operating far beyond breaking point. We need to accelerate medical evacuations from Gaza. A good number of students and some professors in Gaza have been accepted to universities in Europe and Canada. We must adjust our visa processes to allow them to arrive. This also concerns many Afghan female students who cannot continue any studies in Afghanistan but have received confirmed university offers from example in the UK. Some students from Gaza and Afghanistan have been able to arrive in Europe lately. Our visa breaks should not stop these young people's way forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Sara Conti from San Marino will take the floor. Ms. Federica Onori from Italy will follow. Ms. Conti, please take the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. I will speak in Italian. Desidero esprimere il sostegno di San Marino a questa proposta di risoluzione, che richiama con forza un principio fondamentale. Non può esserci una pace duratura senza il rispetto del diritto internazionale, del diritto umanitario e dei diritti umani. Viviamo in una fase storica in cui questi principi vengono troppo spesso messi in discussione. Proprio per questo è essenziale riaffermarne il valore, ma è altrettanto importante interrogarci su come renderli realmente efficaci. Ieri ho avuto l'opportunità di partecipare all'evento dal titolo From Conflict to Accountability, The Role of International Law. In quell'occasione la professoressa Kenetake ha pronunciato una frase che mi ha colpita e voglio condividere con voi, perché credo che meriti di accompagnare anche il nostro lavoro parlamentare. International law is not only about concepts, it is about infrastructure, and we have to implement them. Credo che questo sia il punto centrale. Il diritto internazionale non può rimanere un insieme di principi ai quali facciamo riferimento solo quando vengono violati. Deve tradursi in istituzioni credibili, meccanismi di monitoraggio efficaci, strumenti di cooperazione, capacità investigative, sostegno alle vittime e reali percorsi di accertamento delle responsabilità. È proprio questa l'infrastruttura del diritto internazionale, un sistema che rende concreti i valori che tutti condividiamo. Come parlamentari abbiamo una responsabilità particolare. Non siamo chiamati soltanto a riaffermare i principi, ma a creare condizioni affinché possano essere applicati. Solo così il diritto internazionale potrà continuare ad essere non soltanto un ideale condiviso, ma una garanzia effettiva di giustizia, sicurezza e pace per le nostre società. Grazie.
Grazie, signora. Last speaker on the list is Ms. Federica Onori. Please take the floor from Italy.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you to Chair Perry Pons for this very important text. I want to refer specifically to paragraph 31, which calls upon OSCE participating states and institutions to address the broader impact of conflicts in the Middle East within the OSCE region, because indeed there are many different impacts and important ones of the situation in the Middle East for the participating states of the OSCE, and it's quite ridiculous, in my point of view, the fact that a resolution on the Middle East was dropped by being discussed and put on vote with the argumentation that the Middle East is a region that is outside, geographically speaking, of the OSCE region. That's why we worked on a text, and we are now collecting signatures in order to make sure that this does not become a habit, that of dropping text if are not convenient for some political point of view. I want to read a few paragraphs. The undersigned members of the OCPA wish to express the following concerns regarding the decision of the Standing Committee not to include a supplementary item proposed by Ms. Lynn Runn, Ireland, among the items to be discussed at the annual session. As members of the OCPA, we are concerned that such a decision is in conflict with the spirit that should guide our meetings and the work of the Assembly: open dialogue, democratic deliberation, and the possibility for parliamentarians to raise matters of importance. That's why, in light of the above, we call on the rules and procedures that allow this outcome to be reviewed by a relevant committee of the Assembly. We are now collecting signatures of all colleagues of the OCPA who are wishing to support this claim, this statement, and I am available to receive all your names. Thank you very much.
Grazie, Federica. The debate is closed, dear colleagues. President Pons, do you wish to respond? Please take the floor.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. And I just would like to, first of all, thank you all for the speeches, for the tone of all interventions, even from different perspectives and different analyses. And I think that it's important that this supplementary item is adopted by all in the capital of international law, in the capital of international justice, and also in the light of an assembly that is working for the populations that we represent. So I think more than ever, as the president of the ICC underscored, it's more necessary than ever to work for the populations, to bring them justice and hope, and of course work under the umbrella of international law. So I would like really to say thank you for all your interventions, and nothing else. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Thank you, President Pons. Dear colleagues, we will now move to adoption of paragraphs and consideration of the single amendment submitted to the draft resolution. Copies of the amendment have been made available. When we get to the amendment, I will call the proposer of the amendment first, and then we'll call any opponent of the amendment. I will then ask the sponsor to the draft resolution, President Pons, for his opinion. I ask speakers on the amendment to observe a time limit of 1 minute. Following that, I shall put the amendment to the vote. We are also required to vote on any paragraph to which there are no amendments, as we have done previously to save time and to avoid many votes on items that have broad support. If no amendment has been tabled to a paragraph, and if nobody requests a vote on a paragraph, we consider it adopted. Needless to say, any time a specific vote is requested, we will do so. So, dear colleagues, paragraphs 1 to 23. We will take now paragraphs 1 to 23 together. Does anyone want to vote on any of these paragraphs? Nobody wants a vote. With no request for a vote, paragraphs 1 to 23 are agreed. Now we'll take Amendment 1. I call Ms. Kugler from Austria to propose Amendment 1 to revise paragraph 24. Ms. Kugler from Austria, you have the floor.
Okay, how about this? Yes, I took my neighbor's microphone. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would first like to thank President Pons for a very timely supplementary item. We have heard in many speeches today already how important it is to support a rules-based order, as it is really the purpose of OSCE PA to support a rules-based order through cooperation, through parliamentary diplomacy, and by strengthening institutions. I would also like to thank President Pons for speaking about the situation in Georgia in 2 paragraphs. And I would like to amend the language of paragraph 24 to make it, to underline the urgency a bit more strongly. As we have already heard, the OSCE conducted a fact-finding mission in March, and I quote, "It reports a pattern against protesters, opposition leaders, and journalists." It says, quote, "Violence reaches the threshold of torture," and it speaks of, I quote, "almost complete impunity of perpetrators." For this reason, I asked the Parliamentary Assembly to accept my amendment to strengthen the language, to really say that we condemn undue restrictions, that we condemn excessive and indiscriminate use of force. And it also calls through the amendment for a release of all persons who are arbitrarily detained. And I think without human rights, we cannot speak of real peace and we cannot speak of security. Therefore, I would like to ask the support for this amendment. Thank you.
Dankeschön. Does anyone wish to speak against the amendment, dear colleagues? Yes, Mr. If I'm not mistaken, Mr. Shamkaradze of Georgia, please take a floor. You have 1 minute.
We are witnessing a very dangerous precedent in this assembly when allegations are turned into facts. Well, whatever now Ms. Kugler has presented, those are allegations, and as I have mentioned in my previous intervention, there are no evidences to that. So if we put words into the mouths of the others and then portray as if this is something that they really said and found, then I don't think we will go ahead or we will find a way forward. And this will erode the trust and credibility of this organization, which is already, not really doing well with some of the electoral observation missions. So I think we need to stick to the language that is supported by the evidence. And again, I call upon all of you not to manipulate or not to put words of one mission findings into another mission findings. So we are obviously against this amendment.
Thank you. Before we put Amendment 1 to the vote, I will ask President Pons' opinion of the amendment. Please take the floor.
Thank you. First of all, thank you very much, President. And I would like to say thank you to the proposers of the amendment. I think that what is expressed in the amendment is what we shared with the authorities of the Georgian state during our visit that we paid to Georgia in March. And this was expressed orally in the several meetings that we had, and also with the Public Defendant Office, also with the Prime Minister Office, with the President Office, with the Chair of the President. I think we express in these terms our concerns as Georgia is concerned exactly. And so I think that this declaration will be more rich with this amendment that has been sponsored by Ms. Kugler. So I think we have to adopt it. Thank you.
Thank you, President Pons. We closed the debate on this amendment, and we shall open the voting procedure. All those in favor of the amendment, please raise their voting cards. And let's count. Thank you. You can lower your cards. Will all those against please raise their voting cards? Thank you. Are there any abstentions? Thank you. So we have 92 in favor, 10 against, 7 abstentions. The amendment 1 is adopted. So paragraph 24 as amended is agreed, for the record. Paragraphs 25 to 40, we will now take paragraphs 25 to 40 together. Does anyone want a vote on any of these paragraphs? Nobody wants a vote. Nobody requests a vote, so paragraphs 25 to 40 are agreed. And now we will proceed on the vote on the draft resolution. We will now formally move to a vote on the draft resolution as amended. Would those in favor of adopting the draft resolution as amended, please raise their voting cards. Thank you. Would those against please raise their voting cards? Thank you. You can lower your voting cards. Are there any abstentions? No abstentions. In favor, 112, 9 against, no abstentions. The draft resolution as amended is adopted. Okay. Now we will take number 5, open general debate. We now come to our general debate on international law and shared principles, foundations for security and cooperation in the OSCE area. I currently have approximately 70 speakers on the list, so please observe, dear colleague, the speaking time is 2 minutes. We have to respect that so we have enough time for everybody. I will now call on the first speaker, Mr. Monika Zajkova from North Macedonia. Mr. Tobias Winkler from Germany will follow. Ms. Zajkova, please, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President, distinguished colleagues. The theme of this session reminds us that international law and the principles upon which the OSCE was founded are not abstract concepts. They are the essential framework that enables peace, stability, and trust among the states. Today, these principles are under unprecedented pressure. Armed conflicts, hybrid threats, cyber attacks, disinformation, and attacks of the democratic institution challenge not only our security, but also our commitment to the rules-based international order. North Macedonia continues to believe that dialogue and multilateral cooperation remain the only sustainable path toward lasting security. In March, we had the honor of hosting in the city of Ohrid the 5th Interparliamentary Forum of the Southeast Europe delegations to the OSCE, organized under leadership of Special Rep Kyriakos. So parliamentarians from across Southeast Europe and beyond gathered to address a threat that respects no borders, cybersecurity. Together, we reaffirmed that protecting democratic institutions, critical infrastructures, and our digital space require closer regional cooperation, stronger legislation, and greater resilience against cyber threats. No single state, regardless of its capacity, can confront cyber threats alone. The Hague, known around the world as the City of Peace and Justice, is a fitting place to reaffirm our commitments, so let us demonstrate that international law is not merely a legal obligation, but a political choice. North Macedonia remains fully committed to working with all participating states to strengthen the OSCE and to ensure that our shape principles continue to serve as the foundation of peace, security and prosperity throughout the whole OSCE area. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Zajkova. Mr. Tobias Winkler from Germany will take the floor. Honorable Eddie Fry from Canada will follow. Mr. Winkler, please take the floor.
Mr. President, dear colleagues, our Parliamentary Assembly is going through a difficult period. For 4.5 years, Russia has continued its illegal war of aggression against Ukraine. Instead of de-escalation, we are witnessing an increase in attacks against civilians. Human suffering continues to grow, and so does our responsibility to stand up for peace and security and respect for international law. At a time like this, a strong and effective OSCE Parliamentary Assembly is more important than ever. Our task is to contribute to stability and security and to defend the Helsinki principles. We should also remain focused on the region for which the OSCE bears primary responsibility, the OSCE area. We all know that there is immense suffering in many other parts of the world, but by preserving peace, security and stability in our region, based on our shared principles, we make an important contribution to safeguarding the rules-based international order. As rapporteur of the first committee, I had the privilege of working with colleagues to address today's security challenges and develop meaningful parliamentary recommendations. I would like to thank all members for their constructive cooperation. In the Bureau, we have also launched a process to strengthen the financial sustainability of our Parliamentary Assembly and ensure that it continues to speak with a strong and credible voice. Finally, we must already prepare for the day when Russia's war of aggression comes to an end, hopefully soon. The OSCE and its Parliamentary Assembly have an important role to play in supporting elections, demining, arms control, and confidence building. These efforts will be essential to securing a just and lasting peace. Let us continue to strengthen this assembly so that it can fulfill this responsibility. Thank you very much.
Dankeschön. Honorable Eddie Fry from Canada will take the floor. Ms. Victoria Kinsburska from Ukraine will follow. Ms. Fry, please take the floor.
Thank you, Chair. I want to thank the speakers earlier on for their actually strong commitment to international law. This is what the OSCE was built on. The Helsinki principles actually demand or require that all participating states actually follow international rules-based order. 50 years later, we're seeing that here at the OSCE region, this is being challenged even greater by many of our own nation states within the OSCE. We're seeing environmental degradation, we're seeing violations of citizens' rights, we're seeing human rights violations, we're seeing civilians being killed, we're seeing conflict and territorial integrity being challenged in this region. I think that those are the things we have people saying that international law is not important, that they can make their own laws. I think these are the things we have to be really concerned about here. I want to say that this is a home here in The Hague of the International Criminal Court. I want to congratulate the Honorable Kimberly Prost, who is a Canadian who has been serving in the International Criminal Court since 2017, and our well-known Canadian Louise Arbour, who actually served with distinction here in the International Criminal Court. We've got to learn that rules-based order is the only way to create security and lasting peace and justice and the Helsinki principles. So I want to say that we see women being challenged always as conflict occurs, that women still continue to suffer violence in this region, and that women's rights are actually denied in many instances. Gender parity is being challenged everywhere. So I wanted to say thank you, President Akane, for your statement, and I want to hope that we here at the OSCE Parliamentary Assembly will continue to support and fight for international rules-based order. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Eddie Fry. Ms. Victoria Kinsburska from Ukraine will take the floor. Mr. Marius Arion Nielsen of Norway will follow.
Thank you, Chair. Dear colleagues, I have spoken before about missiles destroyed schools and hospitals, about people killed in their own homes in Ukraine, in my native Kharkiv. But today I want to speak about something less visible. The greatest danger is not only that Russia continues this war. The greatest danger is that the world slowly gets used to it. Children can recognize the sound of different drones. Families know which corridor in their apartment offers the best chance of survival. But we continue to work, we continue to teach, and we continue to smile. But please, do not mistake resilience for normality. No society should ever become accustomed to living under nightly attacks. Every time the world treats another missile strike as just another headline, international law loses a little more of its authority. Every time accountability is delayed, aggression becomes cheaper. Ukraine is defending its own people, but it is also defending a simple principle that should unite every democracy represented in this room. No country has the right to redraw borders with violence, terrorize civilians, and then wait until the world loses interest. History will not ask whether we were tired. History will ask whether we remind principles when it matters most. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Marius Arion Nielsen from Norway will take the floor. Mr. Stefan Pălărie from Romania will follow.
Thanks, Chair. As MPs, we share a responsibility to uphold the principles that underpin security and cooperation in the OSCE area. Today, these principles are under pressure. Russia's war of aggression against Ukraine is a clear violation of international law, completely unjustified, and has a devastating human consequences. It underlines the urgent need for accountability and renewed commitment. The Norwegian delegation recently visited the International Commission on Missing Persons, ICMP, a visit that left a profound impression and underscored the critical importance of their work in identifying the missing and documenting crimes in Ukraine. This is an effort Norway actively supports and one that the international community must continue to strengthen in the pursuit of justice and truth. We see growing pressure on civil society, media freedom and democratic processes in the world and across the OSCE region, reminding us that our shared standards must be actively defended. In this regard, the OSCE and this Assembly have an important role to play. Election observations remains one of our most effective tools for strengthening democratic institutions and building public trust. Today, Norway, together with the US, Canada and Ukraine, held an event regarding the need to put people first in conflicts like the war in Ukraine. We had this together with the People First campaign, which is a broad coalition of human rights organizations who started out as Nobel Peace Prize laureates in 2022. This campaign reminds us that at the heart of every conflict and every policy decision are individuals and families affected by war. And Norway remains firmly committed to supporting Ukraine to withhold the Helsinki principles and to continue to promote democracy as good as we can. Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Stefan Pălărie from Romania will take the floor. Mr. Selami Altinok from Turkey will follow. Mr. Pălărie.
Dear colleagues, diplomacy is more than words. It is a shared political will. Coalitions and organizations like this one are the expression of a common will. OSCE will be relevant and will prevail if we understand that there cannot be business as usual as long as Russia continues to act against the Helsinki Final Act. Let's be honest and straightforward. Russia has put the entire Europe at risk with its irresponsible actions, not only Ukraine. Romania knows better about how the Russian aggression in Ukraine has consequences for all. The repeated violations of Romanian airspace by Russian Federation are not accidents, but they are part of a model of irresponsibility. Only in recent weeks, 2 major incidents took place as a result of this. On May 29th, when a Russian drone penetrated Romanian territory and crashed into a residential building in Galați, 2 Romanian citizens were injured and massive property damage occurred. Understanding the catastrophic potential of hostilities extended into heavily populated urban centers. On June 5th, a naval drone exploded in the port of Constanța. The entry of this drone into Romanian sovereign space is a direct consequence of the war waged by Russia against Ukraine. These days also takes place the 2026 NATO summit in Ankara, Turkey, where Romania reinforces his position regarding the paramount importance of strengthening security at the Black Sea. Security of this region must be a primary objective to this organization because it can be a firm and efficient way to pressure Russia to come back to the table where real negotiations have to happen. Russia cannot choose to appeal the diplomacy only when it serves its cynical purposes. We call all members and our organization to push Russia for an immediate, complete, unconditional ceasefire. Peace is not an optional word in the language of diplomacy. Thank you.
Thank you. Vă mulțumesc frumos. Mr. Selami Altinok from Turkey will take the floor. Mr. Nicholas Shamkaradze from Georgia will follow.
Sayın Başkan, değerli meslektaşlarım, Helsinki ruhunun ve AGİT'in ortak ilkelerinin önemini bir kez daha hatırlamamız gereken kritik zamanlardan geçiyoruz. Bugün AGİT bölgesi ve yakın çevresi son derece kırılgan bir güvenlik ortamıyla karşı karşıyadır. Bu çerçevede Ankara'da ülkemizin ev sahipliğinde düzenlenen NATO Devlet ve Hükümet Başkanları Zirvesi de son derece önemli bir döneme denk gelmektedir. Sayın Cumhurbaşkanımız Recep Tayyip Erdoğan'ın ev sahipliğinde NATO Genel Sekreteri ve müttefik ülkelerin liderlerinin Ankara'da bir araya gelmesi, transatlantik güvenliğin geleceğe bakımından güçlü bir mesaj taşımaktadır. Zirvede savunma ve caydırıcılığın güçlendirilmesi, savunma sanayi alanında işbirliğinin derinleştirilmesi ve Ukrayna'ya desteğin sürmesi gibi bölgemizin güvenliği bakımından hayati öneme sahip başlıklar ele alınacaktır. Bu yönüyle Ankara Zirvesi yalnızca güncel güvenlik sınırlamalarına verilen bir cevap değil, aynı zamanda NATO'nun hibrit tehditler, siber saldırılar, yapay zeka ve ileri savunma teknolojileri temelinde şekillenen NATO 3.0 vizyonuna uyum açısından da stratejik bir dönemeç niteliği taşımaktadır. Türkiye'nin bu zirveye ev sahipliği yapması, ülkemizin Avrupa Atlantik güvenlik mimarisindeki merkezi konumunu bir kez daha ortaya koymakta, aynı zamanda güvenlik, askeri caydırıcılık ve diplomasi arasında kurduğu dengeli yaklaşımın bölgemiz açısından taşıdığı önemi göstermektedir. Bu bağlamda Ukrayna'nın egemenliği ve toprak bütünlüğünün korunması, savaşın insani sonuçların hafifletilmesi ve diplomasi kanallarının açık tutulması gerekmektedir. Kalıcı barış ancak uluslararası hukuk temelinde ve müzakere yoluyla tesis edilebilir. Ancak uluslararası hukuk ve ortak ilkelerimiz yalnızca tek bir kriz başlığı altında hatırlanmamalıdır. Gazze'de yaşanan ağır insani tablo, adaletin, hukukun ve insan onurunun ne kadar ciddi bir sınamayla karşı karşıya olduğunu göstermektedir. Sivillerin korunmadığı, insani yardıma erişimin güvence altına alınmadığı ve Filistin halkının meşru haklarının görmezden gelindiği bir ortamda kalıcı güvenlikten söz edilemez. Değerli meslektaşlarım, gerçek ve kalıcı güvenlik, uluslararası hukuka bağlılık, insani sorumluluk ve sağduyu diplomasisiyle mümkündür. Bir parlamenterler olarak ayrışmaları derinleştirmek yerine ortak ilkeler etrafında diyaloğun, adaletin ve kalıcı barışın sesini yükseltmekle sorumluyuz. Kalıcı barış, sivillerin korunması, çifte standartlardan uzak, tutarlı bir yaklaşım ve adil siyasi çözümler temelinde mümkün olacaktır. Teşekkür ediyorum.
Teşekkür ederim. Mr. Nicholas Shamkaradze from Georgia will take the floor. From Poland, Krzysztof Truskolaski will follow.
Thank you. Amid the mounting geopolitical instabilities and recurring breaches of international law, Georgia stands as a compelling example of a state that, despite facing profound security challenges, remains steadfast in safeguarding its sovereignty through diplomatic means and adherence to the rules-based international order. The regions of Abkhazia and Tkhinvali that comprise 20% of Georgian territory remain under illegal Russian occupation. Russian-backed separatist regime deprive ethnically Georgian children living in the occupied territories of their basic right to receive an education in their native language, and encourage this systemic alteration and whitewashing of Georgian churches, including those of the medieval origin, thereby deliberately erasing Georgian religious and cultural trace from the occupied soil. Kidnapping, extortion, torture of Georgian citizens residing near the occupation line have become a routine occurrence. In addition to these persistent misconducts, I would like to focus on recent developments that further aggravate the situation on the ground. First of all, I express my strongest condemnation of the so-called Treaty on Deepening Allied Interaction concluded between the Russian Federation and the so-called South Ossetia. This document constitutes a flagrant violation of international law and represents Russia's yet another desperate attempt to entrench the occupation and advance the de facto annexation of territories that are internationally recognized as part of Georgia. I hereby remind the international community, including the Russian Federation, that any so-called treaty, agreement, or other act concluded by the self-proclaimed authorities of the occupied regions is inherently null and void. I would also like to comment on the recent so-called resignation of the self-proclaimed president of the occupied Khin Valley region and his subsequent appointment as an advisor to Russian president, and draw your attention to the travesty of it. Russia recognizes occupied Khin Valley region as an independent state and subsequently also recognizes the president of this republic as a president. But then they force him to resign and ultimately to get employment in Putin's office as his assistant. So this act once again proves that recognition of so-called independence of South Ossetia and Abkhazia by the Russian Federation is itself a mockery of recognition process. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And now I would like to give the floor to Mr. Krzysztof Truskolaski from Poland.
Thank you, Mr. President, dear colleagues. At the outset, I wish to express my sincere gratitude to the Dutch delegation and its head, Ms. Farah Karimi, for the excellent organization of this session and for the generous hospitality we have received. More than 50 years after the adoption of the Helsinki Final Act, its principles remain the foundation of security and cooperation in the OSCE area. The inviolability of borders, the territorial integrity of states, respect for human rights and fundamental freedoms, and the fulfillment of obligations under international law are not abstract commitments. They are the basis of peace and stability in Europe. Russia's ongoing war of aggression against Ukraine is a flagrant violation of these principles and of international law. It directly contradicts the commitments undertaken in Helsinki in 1975 and continues to undermine European security as a whole. Regrettably, we continue to see no indication that Russia is prepared either to end its aggression or to engage in genuine peace efforts. Poland remains steadfast in its support for Ukraine's inherent right to self-defense. Discussions on sensitive historical issues, which are part of the broader context of Polish-Ukrainian relations, do not affect Poland's firm and consistent support for Ukraine's sovereignty and territorial integrity. In the face of Russia's aggression, Poland stands in solidarity with Ukraine and with all those who continue to suffer from this war, particularly following the recent devastating attacks on Kyiv and other Ukrainian cities. At the same time, the OSCE itself continues to face a serious institutional crisis. The adoption of the organization's budget for the first time in 5 years is an important and welcome development. Yes, it does not change the fact that as long as Russia continues its aggression, there can be no return to business as usual. There should be no normal engagement with the aggressor, Russia, nor with its supporter, Belarus. In closing, let me reaffirm Poland's unwavering commitment to multilateralism, international law, and the principles that underpin our shared security. We remain convinced that only a rules-based international order can effectively safeguard peace, democracy, and respect for human rights. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tuskolaski, and I remind you that we are running out of time, so it's important to stick to the minutes that we have. So first of all, I would like to give the floor to Mr. Oscar Mina, and then he will be followed by Mr. Willem Junila. So Oscar from San Marino, you have the floor.
Grazie Presidente. Intervenire sul tema del diritto internazionale e dei principi comuni che costituiscono i fondamenti della sicurezza e della cooperazione nell'area OSCE per un piccolo Stato come la Repubblica di San Marino significa riflettere sulle responsabilità che condividiamo nei confronti della stabilità del nostro spazio comune. I principi sanciti dall'atto finale di Helsinki mantengono oggi una straordinaria attualità. Il rispetto della sovranità, dell'integrità territoriale, della soluzione pacifica delle controversie, della non ingerenza negli affari interni e dei diritti fondamentali che rappresentano le basi irrinunciabili della nostra sicurezza collettiva. Anche per noi, dicevo, per la Repubblica di San Marino, per un piccolo Stato, il diritto internazionale non è un concetto astratto e vogliamo ribadire il nostro convinto sostegno ai principi e ai valori condivisi, garanzia di equilibrio, di uguaglianza tra le nazioni e di tutela della dignità di tutti i popoli che costituiscono il fondamento della sicurezza e della cooperazione nell'area dell'OSCE. San Marino, forte della propria tradizione di neutralità attiva, dialogo e rispetto delle istituzioni internazionali, continueremo a sostenere con convinzione il multilateralismo e la cooperazione internazionale in tutte le sedi, nel rispetto ovviamente del diritto internazionale, perché come parlamentari abbiamo una responsabilità tutti quanti particolare: contribuire a rafforzare la fiducia e promuovere il confronto costruttivo e sostenere la resilienza delle nostre democrazie. Grazie Presidente.
Grazie, Onorevole Mina. Now the floor is for Mr. Wilhelm Junila, and he will be followed with Barry Ward from Ireland. Thank you.
Distinguished Chair, the rules-based international order, the foundation of stability, sovereignty and prosperity forged after the horrors of the last century, is under assault. We see it, for example, in the blatant aggression of Russia and the destabilizing actions of Iran. Consider Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine, not merely a regional conflict, but a direct challenge to the territorial integrity of sovereign states. In response, we have imposed sweeping sanctions, freezing assets of oligarchs and officials, excluding Russian banks, banning energy imports, and enforcing export controls on dual-use technologies. These measures have strained Russia's war machine and exposed the vulnerabilities of its shadow fleet. Diplomatically, we are supporting the creation of a special tribunal for the crime of aggression. Militarily, we stand with Ukraine through unprecedented aid, training, and intelligence. Iran also poses a grave multifaceted threat to nuclear non-proliferation and regional stability, and our own security through its proxies and human rights abuses. We may also have challenges in the future with emerging powers who seek to expand influence and achieve objectives that today would be considered unacceptable. We must act with resolve and defend our shared principles. These actions, including legal accountability and steadfast support for victims, demonstrate that the rules-based order is not abstract. It is defended through coordinated coalitions, persistent enforcement, and a willingness to bear short-term costs for long-term security. We must safeguard peace, freedom, and prosperity for generations to come. We cannot afford complacency against those who seek to replace rules with power. Let us remain resolute and proactive. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mila. Now the floor is for Mr. Barry Ward, and he will be followed by Ms. Irina Gerashenko from Ukraine. Mr. Ward, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. The primary instrument we have for enforcing the international rules-based order is a judicial system that's signed up to by nations, including the International Court of Justice, but also when it comes to crimes against humanity and genocide, the International Criminal Court, obviously based here in The Hague. There is a real issue now with some countries taking actions against the International Criminal Court that are baseless and that are compromising the court's ability to do its business. Now, if we allow that to continue, if we allow a situation where the ICC is sidelined rather than put to the front and center as the way in which we can enforce international criminal law, if it is unable to do its business, then we lose a really important instrument for enforcing the very things that we know are at the heart of protecting humanity around the world. And there are countries now who are sanctioning judges and prosecutors within the ICC, not for a good reason, but for essentially political reasons. And I think we as an assembly must be willing to call that out for what it is, because the loss of something like the ICC, or indeed any other international judicial instrument, is a loss for all of us and a loss for our ability to enforce international law. And I would like to see us being more proactive in saying to those states who see fit to sanction and therefore interfere with the work of the ICC that that is not acceptable, that it is below the standards that we expect of countries who seek to act within the international world order, and we think that it damages our ability to enforce international law, humanitarian law, and the rule of law. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ward, for your words. Ms. Gerashenko has the floor, and she will be followed by Ms. Pia Kauma from Finland. Irina, you have the floor.
Thank you, dear colleague. We meet in a city now across the world as a city of peace and justice. That is why Ukraine is grateful to the Netherlands and to all partners who support the establishment of the special tribunal for the crime of aggression against Ukraine. In recent weeks and days, Russia has again launched massive missiles and drones attacks against Ukrainian cities. Kyiv, Kharkiv, Dnipro, Sumy, Zaporizhia, Chernihiv, Kherson have been under fire. Families have been killed in their homes. According to the UN Human Rights Monitoring Mission in Ukraine, 96% of interviewed released Ukrainian prisoners of war reported torture in Russian captivity, including electric shock, mock execution, and sexual violations. Now, Ukrainian law enforcement authorities have opened 400 criminal proceedings concerning sexual crimes commitment in the context of Russian aggression. The youngest known victims was only 4 years old. In Kyiv, Russian strikes damage in Kyiv-Pecherska Lavra, one of the most sacred and historic places not only for Ukraine but for European culture and Christian heritage. During the martial law, Russia destroyed 2,000 Ukrainian culture centers. It is culture genocide against our identity. When Russia fails to achieve its strategic objectives on the battlefield, it changed tactics. It tried to compensate for military failure with terror against civilians. This is a logic of terrorist states. And therefore, when Ukraine and our delegation ask for more air defense system, we are asking for the protecting of human life. We are grateful to all partners who have already provided air defense system and ammunition. Russia's war machine is not abstract. We must increase pressure on Russian energy sector, target the shadow float, and restrict access to advanced technology and components used in missiles and drones. We must sanction those who help Russia bypass existing measure. Ukraine wants peace more than anyone, but peace must be just and lasting. A just and lasting peace means the restoration of Ukrainian sovereignty and territorial integrity. It means to return of prisoners of war and Ukrainian children, reparation of war destruction. It means security guarantee strong enough to prevent another invasion. There are not not only Ukrainian demands, they are the principles on which the OSCE was built: sovereignty, territorial integrity, the non-use of force, human rights, and human dignity. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Irina. I remind you that we have 58 speakers, and then we should not eat the time of the others. Ms. Pia Kama has the floor, and she will be followed by Mr. Luis Grassa from Portugal. Pia, you have the floor.
Mr. Chair, dear colleagues, standing here in The Hague, the city of peace and justice, we are reminded of a fundamental truth. There can be no lasting peace without justice. Russia's war against Ukraine has become one of the defining tests of our commitment to international justice. Independent investigations have documented numerous alleged war crimes and other serious violations of international law. Those responsible must be investigated and, where guilt is established by a court of law, held accountable. The same principle must apply everywhere. Justice cannot depend on geography, politics, or power. Across the world, from Ukraine to every place where war killed, tortured, displaced, and stripped of their dignity. Children lose their families, parents bury their sons and daughters, entire communities lose not only their homes, but also their faith in humanity. That is why The Hague matters. It stands as a symbol of the world's determination that no one should be above the law. Dear colleagues, let our message from The Hague be clear. There can be no lasting peace without justice, and there can be no justice without accountability. Thank you.
Thank you, dear. Thank you, dear Pia. Now the floor is for Luis Grassa from Portugal, and then he will be followed by Mr. Zenguliev from Azerbaijan.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Pere Pons, dear friends, 3 days ago, the majority of the Standing Committee here in The Hague decided a veto over the discussion of a supplementary item on Palestine. Allow me to say, with all due respect, it was a wrong decision. Human rights are not a political option. They are a biological foundation. Preventing the discussion about how some of us look at the world and waste an opportunity to confront our cultural, political, and individual views with one another was not only wasting an opportunity to build trust or discuss peace solutions, but a huge political and democratic mistake. What is the use of a parliament if not to confront ideas and hope that new concepts and concessions will emerge from the debate? Sometimes it seems that we live in a global state of hallucination, in which we are willing to believe in any excuse, in every lie, so as not to see reality. Defending international law in Palestine is defending the application of international law in Ukraine and in every other place in the world. If we want to be respected in Ukraine, if we want our position to be heard in the world and take it into account, we cannot have double standards. International law applies for everyone, so everywhere. Dear friends, I would like to take this opportunity to thank Farah, Boris, and the Dutch delegation and express 3 wishes. The first, that in this assembly, we always accept the debate. We are here because we agree to disagree, never veto a discussion again. Debate is our responsibility, silence is not. The second, that we all join President Zelensky and our President, Pere Pons, in the request for an end to the war in Ukraine and the beginning of a peace negotiations. Mr. Putin, stop the aggression. We want peace in Europe. And finally, because a child is just a child, here in The Hague, in Kyiv or in Gaza, let us be clear that we do not allow that no one try to cover our eyes or try to silence us. Mr. Netanyahu, stop the terror in Gaza. Give peace a chance in Palestine. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Grassa. Thank you, Luis. Now the floor is for Mr. Azaguliev. He will be followed by Mr. Johan Buser.
Mr. President,
Today, we had the opportunity to visit the International Court of Justice here in The Hague, one of the world's principal institutions entrusted with upholding international law. Yes, unfortunately, international law and the foundations of international security are not always respected or upheld. Too often, international law is applied selectively rather than universally. The authority of multilateral institutions is being weakened, and the language of diplomacy is increasingly being replaced by the language of force. The United Nations Security Council, a cornerstone of the global security architecture, has too often proven unable to respond effectively to today's challenges. To remain credible and effective, United Nations Security Council must be reformed to become more representative, more transparent, with more effective mechanisms to address the realities of the 21st century. Colleagues, we often speak of a new world order, yet we have not found the political will to reform the old one or the collective vision to build a better one. Today, we face a clear choice. We can strengthen international law, restore confidence in multilateralism, reform global governance, and build a more effective, inclusive, and resilient international security architecture. Or we can continue along the current path, where mistrust deepens, dialogue gives way to confrontation, and instability becomes the new normal. History will judge our generation not by the crisis we inherited, but by whether we had the wisdom, the courage, and the determination to reform the international order while there was still time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Guliev. Now the floor is for Johan Busser from Sweden, and then he will be followed by Thomas Porte from France.
Thank you, Mr. President, and dear colleagues. We are meeting here in The Hague, a city that rightly carries the title of the international capital of peace and justice. It is home to institutions that remind us that international law is not an abstract ideal. It is the foundation of our common security and of the international order we have built together since the end of the Second World War. That is why our discussions about Russia and Ukraine cannot be separated from our commitments to Helsinki Final Act and the principles on which the OSCE was founded. Russia has violated those principles in the most fundamental way. It has launched an illegal war of aggression, attempted to redraw internationally recognized borders by force, committed widespread atrocities against civilians, and deliberately attacked civilian infrastructure. These are not misunderstandings between neighbors. They are grave violations of international law. Therefore, our support to Ukraine must remain firm, united, and long-term. I know that some argue that it's time to reopen political dialogue with representatives of Russia. Dialogue can be an important tool in diplomacy, but dialogue must never come at the expense of the victim of aggression. Any political engagement concerning the future of Ukraine must take place with Ukraine's full participation and consent. Nothing about Ukraine without Ukraine. During our visit here in The Hague, the Swedish delegation met representatives of the Register of Damage for Ukraine. We also visited the International Criminal Court, and this court here in Hague plays a vital role in ensuring that those responsible for war crimes and crimes against humanity can be held individually accountable. As parliamentarians, we also have a responsibility to defend international law consistently. The principles we defend in Ukraine are the same principles that must guide us everywhere. Whether we speak about Ukraine or Palestine, respect for international law, protection of civilians, and accountability for violations cannot be selective. Let us ensure that peace is built on justice and not impunity. Thank you.
Thank you. Je passe la parole à Monsieur Porte, and he will be followed by Mr. Pavlov Frolov from Ukraine. Thomas, vous avez la parole.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Je me joins à ce qui a été dit précédemment. La décision d'évacuer le débat sur la Palestine n'était pas une bonne décision, puisque je considère que nous devons ici débattre de tous les sujets et il n'y a rien à craindre du débat sur la question palestinienne. Le droit international repose sur une idée simple mais fondamentale. Les mêmes règles doivent s'appliquer pour tous. Les principes inscrits dans la Charte des Nations Unies, Le respect de la souveraineté des États, la protection des populations civiles et l'interdiction de l'acquisition de territoires par la force ne sont pas des principes à géométrie variable. Ils sont universels. C'est pourquoi la question du double standard mérite d'être posée avec sérieux. Lorsque la communauté internationale condamne rapidement et fermement une violation du droit international dans un conflit, elle renforce la crédibilité de ces principes. Mais lorsque la même détermination n'est pas perçue dans d'autres situations, la confiance dans l'ordre international s'affaiblit. Les conflits en Ukraine et en Palestine sont différents par leur histoire, leur contexte et leurs acteurs. Pourtant, une même exigence doit guider notre analyse. Le respect du droit international et du droit international humanitaire. Les civils doivent être protégés partout. Les violations doivent être dénoncées partout. Les enquêtes doivent être soutenues partout. Les responsabilités doivent être établies partout. Il ne s'agit pas ici de comparer les souffrances. À Kiev comme à Gaza, au Liban ou en Iran, les vies humaines ont toutes la même valeur. Les principes que nous défendons ne peuvent pas dépendre de la nationalité des victimes, des alliances géopolitiques, ni des intérêts stratégiques du moment. Notre Assemblée a raison de condamner avec fermeté la guerre d'agression menée par la Russie. La même fermeté doit être au rendez-vous pour condamner le génocide commis à Gaza, la colonisation en Cisjordanie et l'annexion d'une partie du Liban. Le peuple palestinien mérite notre soutien. Je rappelle que l'an dernier, nous avons voté une résolution qui invite les pays membres de l'OSCE à reconnaître l'État de Palestine. Si nous n'agissons pas, bientôt il n'y aura plus de Palestiniens et de Palestine pour reconnaître un État. Si le droit international est appliqué de manière sélective, il risque d'être perçu non comme un cadre de justice, mais un instrument politique. Notre responsabilité est collective. Elle doit être de défendre une approche cohérente. Exiger le respect du droit en Ukraine implique d'exiger le respect du droit en Palestine. Arrêter les doubles standards n'est pas seulement une question de cohérence politique, c'est une condition essentielle pour construire un ordre international fondé sur la justice, l'égalité des peuples et le respect universel de la dignité humaine. Merci.
Merci. I would like to pass the floor to Mr. Hans Dalkils, and then he will be followed by Mr. Giuseppe De Cristofaro.
But, Mr. President, you announced Pavlo Frolov.
Sorry, yeah, I forgot you. So now the floor is yours. Sorry, I apologize. I apologize, Pablo. Sorry.
Thank you, Mr. President. Dear colleagues, today we are in The Hague, in the capital of international law and justice. Russia's war of aggression is the most direct and destructive assault of international law and the Helsinki principles in the history of our organization. Every day, Russia kills Ukrainian civilians. Only 1 day ago, Russian mixed drone missile attack caused more than 15 deaths in Kyiv and Kyiv region. Approximately 16,000 Ukrainian civilians remain illegally deprived of their liberty. Many are held incommunicado without access to legal assistance, adequate medical care, or contact with their families. Some have been detained for years without any formal legal status. Russia must provide complete and verifiable list of all detainees, disclose their whereabouts and guarantee access for ICRC and other competent independent humanitarian actors. More than 20.5 thousand cases of unlawful deportation and forcible transfer have been officially reported. Russia continues to change children's citizenship, place them in Russian families, expose them to forced assimilation and obstruct their return. Dear colleagues, the Hague Declaration must state clearly, Russia is the aggressor, Ukraine is the victim. There can be no false balance, no recognition of territorial acquisition by force, and no peace purchased with impunity. Participating states should provide the necessary potential financial and practical support, cooperate in the collection and transfer of evidence, enforce arrest warrants, and ensure that official position does not become a shield against responsibility. Ukraine counts on your further support. Thank you.
Thank you. And now Mr. Dalkils has the floor, and he will be followed by Mr. De Cristofaro.
Sayın Başkan, değerli meslektaşlarım, müsaadenizle ayakta konuşmak istiyorum. Uluslararası hukuk ve ortak ilkelerimizin en ağır biçimde sınandığı bir dönemden geçiyoruz. Vicdanlarımızın sınandığı bir dönemden geçiyoruz. Bugün burada uluslararası hukuktan, ilkelerden, güvenlikten söz ediyorsak, bu kavramların yalnızca bildirilerde, karar metinlerinde ve diplomatik açıklamalarda kalmaması gerekiyor. Çünkü hukuk güçlü olanın işine geldiğini yaptığı bir kavram değildir. Uluslararası hukuk herkes için her yerde, her koşulda geçerli olmalıdır. Aksi halde ortak ilkelerden değil, çifte standartlardan bahsetmiş oluruz. Bugün bunun en acı örneklerinden bir tanesini Gazze'de görüyoruz. Gazze'de yaşananlar artık sadece insani kriz değil, uluslararası hukukun, insan onurunun, ortak vicdanımızın karşı karşıya kaldığı ağır bir sınavdır. Çocukların, kadınların, masum sivillerin hayatını kaybettiği, işgallerin yaşandığı, hastanelerin, okulların, ibadethanelerin bombalandığı, altyapılarının hedef alındığı bir tabloyla karşı karşıyayız. Biz burada bu toplantıları yaparken sözde ateşkes uygulanıyor ancak 16 tane sivil Filistinli yine İsrail'in saldırgan halinden dolayı katledildi. Dolayısıyla İsrail sadece Filistinlileri değil, bölgeyi tehdit ediyor, insanlığın barışını tehdit ediyor, maalesef bölge huzurunu ve barışı, istikrarı tehdit ediyor. Uluslararası hukukun Hague'de bulunduğumuz merkezde ayağa kalkmamın sebebi şudur. İnsanlık cephesinin ayağa kalkması lazım. Bu haksızlıkların, bu kuşatmaların, bu işgallerin, bu insan hakları ihlallerinin sona ermesi için insanlık vicdanının ayağa kalkması lazımdır. Çünkü insanlığın artık savaşlara değil, işgallere değil, soykırımlara değil, sadece merhamete ihtiyacı var, adalete ihtiyacı var, insan haklarını savunmaya ihtiyacı var. Burada iki devletli bir çözümün acilen, sözde değil gerçek bir ateşkesin sağlanması ve orada Filistinlilerin meşru haklarının, işgal edilen topraklarının iade edilmesi ve iki devletli bir çözümü uluslararası hukuk mutlaka dayatmalıdır, mutlaka muhataplarına iletmelidir. Ben Hague'den buradan bütün parlamenterlere, bütün Agit bölgesine sesleniyorum. Bölgedeki yaşanan ve dünyanın neresinde yaşanıyorsa yaşansın zulümlere, işgallere, katliamlara dur demenin vakti geldi ve geçiyor. Saygılar sunuyorum.
Thank you, Mr. Dankilis. Now the floor is for Giuseppe De Cristofaro, and he will be followed by Ms. Linnea Wickman from Sweden. You have the floor.
Grazie Presidente, parlerò in italiano. Il diritto internazionale non serve, vale fino a un certo punto, o peggio ancora non esiste. Affermazioni come queste erano impensabili fino a pochi anni fa, eppure oggi sono parte del discorso politico dominante. L'ordine giuridico internazionale viene smantellato ed è sostituito da una nuova ideologia basata sulla forza e sulle sfere di influenza. Questo significa la fine dell'ordine democratico che ha governato il mondo per decenni. L'aggressione di Putin all'Ucraina, la guerra illegale di Trump in Iran e Libano, il genocidio di Gaza non devono e non possono essere valutati con diversi metri di giudizio. Non è ammissibile, cioè, un doppio standard secondo il quale alcuni di questi atti vengono considerati dei crimini ed altri invece sono giustificati da ragioni politiche. E anche per questo motivo considero molto grave e sbagliato che questa nostra Assemblea abbia cancellato dall'ordine del giorno il tema della Palestina. I diritti umani non hanno confini e la soluzione politica dei conflitti dovrebbe essere sempre il principale obiettivo dell'OSCE. Noi qui siamo all'Aia, è stato detto da tanti, una città che è la sede delle principali organizzazioni giuridiche internazionali, anch'esse oggi sotto attacco. E allora noi dobbiamo difendere il diritto internazionale e la giustizia internazionale. Ormai anche le linee rosse tracciate a protezione dei civili, dei bambini, dei medici, dei giornalisti, degli operatori umanitari e diplomatici sono state completamente demolite. La guerra torna ad essere uno strumento ordinario della relazione tra i paesi. Eppure mai come oggi si vede la differenza tra l'incapacità dei governi di porre un freno a questa deriva e la mobilitazione dei popoli del mondo che non accettano la guerra e la corsa al riarmo come unico destino dell'umanità. Ed è per questo necessario tornare al primato della politica. Non è più il tempo delle ambiguità, dei silenzi, dei doppi standard e delle complicità. Grazie.
Grazie. Now I would like to give the floor to Ms. Linnea Wickman from Sweden, and she will be followed by Ms. Lucia Tazer-Perlin from Slovenia.
Thank you, Mr. President and dear colleagues. International law, it was built for moments like this, when power is used to violate our rights, when civilians pay the price, and when the rules-based order is tested. And in Ukraine, we see this in Russia's illegal and imperialist war, and in Palestine under Israel's occupation. If we are serious about defending international law, we must defend it everywhere. In Gaza, civilians remain trapped in a catastrophe. And on the West Bank, including East Jerusalem, settlement expansion, settler violence, demolitions, and displacement continue to deny Palestinians safety and freedom every day. And here in The Hague, we must be clear about the law. In its advisory opinion 2 years ago, the International Court of Justice found that Israel's continued presence in the occupied Palestinian territory is unlawful. Israel must end that unlawful presence as rapidly as possible, cease settlement activity, evacuate settlers, and make reparations for the damage caused. But the court was also clear about all states. No state should treat an unlawful occupation as lawful. States must not aid or assist in maintaining it. And states must distinguish in their dealings with Israel between the territory of the State of Israel and the occupied Palestinian territory. So the question for each and every one of us in this room is, what are our countries actually doing to fulfill these obligations? Are we making that distinction in practice, in trade, arms exports, diplomacy, and policy? Are we ensuring that our actions do not contribute to maintaining an unlawful occupation? And the same principles also apply to Lebanon, where the Security Council Resolution 1701 must be implemented. And I also urge all the colleagues here in the room to put your signature on the statement criticizing the supplementary item on Palestine being removed for political reasons. Thank you.
Thank you, Limea. I would like to give the floor to Ms. Berlin, and then she will be followed by Ms. Sevini Fataliyeva from Azerbaijan. Lucia, you have the floor.
Thank you, President. In the past year, Slovenia has successfully concluded its 2-year term as a non-permanent member of the United Nations Security Council, where having the same standards for all was our key principle. Whoever was committing breaches, whatever state, we were firm defenders of principles of international law and defense of human rights. Since we are gathering in The Hague, I must also mention Judge Betty Hochler, nominated from Slovenia to the International Criminal Court, actually the youngest judge ever elected to the ICC. She is a brave person, upholding international law in her everyday work, even in the face of personal sanctions against her. It is important that we are here, that we are persisting, evolving, and not giving up on a rules-based order, because we have learned from history that that is the path to a peaceful society. The path of force and spheres of influence is not. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you very much. And now Madame Fataliyeva has the floor, and she will be followed by Mr. Kemal Selik from Turkey.
Thank you, Mr. President. Dear colleagues, international law and shared principles are tested every day in the domains where our security is most exposed, and cyberspace is now one of them. A rules-based order in the OSCE area must extend to the digital infrastructure that underpins our states. For decades, security meant protecting physical borders. Today, another frontier has emerged, the digital one. A successful cyber attack can disrupt public services and undermine public confidence without a single shot being fired. Cybersecurity is no longer an IT issue. It is a matter of national strength and state sovereignty. Across the OSCE region, the question is no longer whether cyber attacks will occur, but whether our institutions are robust enough to withstand them. For Azerbaijan, cybersecurity is part of our broader vision of digital sovereignty and national resilience. We recognize that in the 21st century, states compete not only for resources and markets, but for technology, data, and artificial intelligence. That is why the 2026-2028 Action Plan for Accelerating Digital Development includes 58 initiatives to strengthen cybersecurity and protect critical infrastructure, complemented by our newly established National Cybersecurity Agency, uniting security operations, incident response, and digital forensics under one command structure. Azerbaijan's experience reflects a broader truth. No single state, however well prepared, can secure cyberspace alone. What we are building at home only matters if it connects to what we build together. That is why the OSCE has an important role in strengthening confidence-building measures. At the same time, every member state must retain the sovereign right to determine its own digital development model. International cooperation should strengthen national resilience, not replace national responsibility. Colleagues, the digital frontier will not wait for us to be ready. It's up to the Assembly to ensure that our principles of international law keep pace with the threats of our time, and that resilience, not vulnerability, defines our common future. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now I would like to give the floor to Mr. Kemal Salik and then to Ms. Maya Bitadze from Georgia.
Sayın Başkan, çok teşekkürler. Uluslararası hukuk ve ortak ilkeler güvenliğin ve işbirliğinin temelidir. Ancak bu ilkeler yalnızca metinlerde kalmamalı, krizlerin ortasında, sahada ve insan hayatını doğrudan etkileyen alanlarda da uygulanmalıdır. Bugün Agit bölgesi ve yakın çevresi savaşlar, işgaller, bölgesel krizler ve insani felaketlerle karşı karşıyadır. Bu tablo bize güvenliğin yalnızca askeri dengelerle ya da siyasi hesaplarla açıklanamayacağını göstermektedir. Güvenliğin merkezinde insan vardır. İnsan onuru, insan güvenliği, uluslararası hukuk ve adalet vardır. Lahey Adalet Divanı'nda yargılanmasına karar verilen Netanyahu, soykırım suçu işlemeye maalesef devam ediyor. Filistin konulu yan etkinlikte sunum yapan uzmanların raporunda da ifade edildiği gibi İsrail hapishanelerinde çocuklar cinsel, duygusal ve fiziksel işkenceleri görmeye devam ediyorlar. Taş atan çocuklar askeri mahkemelerde yargılanıyor ve 20 yıl ceza veriyorlar. Yetişkinlere uygulanan cezaları çocuklara da uyguluyorlar. Son 20 yılda maalesef 10.000 civarında çocuk alıkonuluyor İsrail hapishanelerinde. Çocukluğunu yaşayamayan binlerce çocuk dünyanın, insanlığın ve maalesef bizlerin umurunda değil. Sayın Başkan, Avrupa Birliği ve AGİT'le tarihi sorumluluğunu hatırlamalı ve susmamalıdır. Bu soykırıma ve katliamlara karşı ne kadar duyarsız olursak olalım, tarih bu insanlık suçunu asla unutmayacak ve bu suçlular gelecek nesiller tarafından yargılanacaktır. Sayın Başkan, barış ve adalet şehri Lahey'de, Filistin'de iki devletli çözümü ısrarla savunmalıyız. Netanyahu'nun katliam hukukuna değil, evrensel hukukun uygulanmasını savunmalıyız. Son olarak diyorum ki, en büyük dileğim şu, bir gün Filistinli çocukların da çocukluğunu yaşamasıdır. Teşekkür ederim.
Thank you, Mr. Salik. Now I would like to give the floor to Maya Bitadze from Georgia, and she will be followed by Mr. Pavel Bartuszek from Iceland.
Mr. President, I would like to express our delegation's growing concern regarding the increasingly selective and politicized approach toward Georgia within the OSCE. While we repeatedly hear criticism regarding the transparency legislation, public order measures, and elections, we hear far less about the continued occupation of 20% of Georgia's territory by Russian Federation, the ongoing borderization process, and human rights violations in the occupied regions. It is difficult to understand why the clearest violation of the Helsinki Principles receives less attention than domestic political debate in Georgia. A recurring problem is the application of different standards to similar issues. Georgia is criticized for adopting transparency measures that many participating states maintain in their legislation. The same applies to public order measures. Following violent attacks on presidential palace, burning the parliament building, throwing Molotov cocktails at police officers, and damaging public property, Georgia strengthened legal protections for state institutions and public order. Some delegates in this assembly were present in Georgia and witnessed that these events went far beyond peaceful protests. However, they still turned a blind eye to violence that happened in the streets of Tbilisi. Instead, measures comparable to those applied in many participating states, including the United States, France, United Kingdom, and the Netherlands, are portrayed as democratic backsliding. What is considered democratic resilience elsewhere is too often described differently when it comes to Georgia. The selective approach is visible in discussions about certain prisoners. No international court determined that Georgia has political prisoners. Political preferences and declarations cannot replace legal verdicts, particularly when some of the individuals concerned choose not to use available legal mechanisms, including amnesty procedures. The growing politicization of the OSCE instrumental is also deeply concerning. Mechanisms designed to establish facts and promote accountability, including the Moscow mechanism, risk losing credibility when they are used to reinforce predetermined political narratives. This trend is dangerous for the OSCE. Finally, those who believe that resolutions or political campaigns will determine Georgia's future underestimate the Georgian people. Georgia remains firmly committed to democracy, reforms, European integration, and international cooperation. At the same time, we remain equally committed to defending our sovereignty, our institutions, and the right of our citizens to determine their own future. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Now I would like to give the floor to Pavel Partzusek, and then voy a dar la palabra a Artemis Rayo de España.
Thank you, Chair. Dear colleagues, these days we are witnessing continuous atrocities by Russia against Ukrainian citizens and civilians. This brutal aggression is fundamentally illegal and morally reprehensible. Iceland stands unwavering in its support for Ukraine because international law must matter. Legal principles matter because when we will prosecute those who have committed crimes, we need to have a firm ground to stand on. But whether we like it or not, European security itself in the upcoming decades will not be based on legal principles alone. Legal principles alone cannot deter tanks, drones, or long-range missiles. True long-term stability requires hard security frameworks. The future of secure Europe depends heavily on deepening and strengthening our Western, European, and transatlantic alliances. Anchoring Ukraine firmly within the EU or NATO would fundamentally improve our collective security. People sometimes refer to the signing of the Helsinki Final Act as some glory days of dialogue and non-aggression. But remember that back then a massive proportion of the European population lived under a forced Russian sphere of influence. Today, Europe's largest ongoing war is raging precisely because people are still trying to break free from that same sphere of Russian influence. They should be allowed to do so, whether in Ukraine or anywhere else. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Now I would like to give the floor to Mr. Rayo, and then he will be followed by Mr. Ulrich Torren from Germany.
Gracias, presidente. Al inicio de esta asamblea, el Standing Committee decidió silenciar el debate sobre Palestina. Una tarjeta roja retirada de forma fraudulenta. Fue un acuerdo de 19 jefes de delegación sobre los 57 miembros de esta asamblea, un tercio de la asamblea. Un acuerdo que decidió silenciar la palabra de esta asamblea. Eso no es fair play, no es juego limpio. No se puede decir que el debate sobre Palestina está fuera de nuestras fronteras, porque este es un debate que ya iniciamos hace 2 años en Bucarest y lo mantuvimos en otras muchas reuniones de esta asamblea, especialmente en el Foro Mediterráneo. Y el mensaje que envió el Standing Committee, o esa minoría del Standing Committee, a los países ribereños del Mediterráneo no es un debate, no es un mensaje
leal, no es un mensaje generoso, no es un mensaje honesto con los fines de esta Asamblea. Hoy corresponde de nuevo convocar a esta Asamblea para recuperar el diálogo, el debate y la humanidad frente a la causa palestina y seguir empujando a favor de la solución, de la paz entre dos estados, el Estado de Israel y el Estado de Palestina, en la defensa de la dignidad y de los derechos humanos, en definitiva, de la humanidad, y en el fin de la agresión de Israel. Muchas gracias.
Muchísimas gracias, Artemi. I would like to give the floor now to Mr. Ulrich Todden, and then he will be followed by Mr. Sen Crow from Ireland. You have the floor, colleague.
Thank you, Mr. President. Distinguished colleagues, since our last annual session in Porto, we had to experience truly an annus horribilis. According to the Uppsala Conflict Data Program, the number of armed conflicts between states has doubled for the second consecutive year. Those 8 conflicts recorded in 2025 represent the highest figure since the Second World War. In another 65 conflicts, at least one of the conflicting parties was a state, truly a grim record. And with the expiration of New START in these troubled times, the last remaining arms control treaty was buried in silence. Ukraine has been ablaze for 4.5 years. Russia's war of aggression against Ukraine, as well as the atrocious crimes committed against the Ukrainian civilian population, cry out to heaven. And we therefore continue to stand in unwavering solidarity with Ukraine, a nation so unjustly attacked. We defend the values and principles of the OSCE not out of nostalgia, but out of deep conviction and against all those who would violate them. This applies obviously first and foremost to Russia, but also increasingly to the United States, sadly. The United States have illegally abducted the Venezuelan head of state and together with Israel instigated a war of aggression against Iran in clear violation of international law. There must be no double standards. There must be no hypocrisy. The rules-based international order applies either to everyone or to none at all. As a parliamentary assembly, we must demonstrate that the spirit of The Hague, as well as Helsinki, burns brightly within us, and that we can see and defend the peaceful futures where others cannot. Peace and justice. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Todden. Now I would like to give the floor to Mr. Son Crow, and then he will be followed by Antonio Rodriguez from Portugal.
Thank you, Chair. The unilateral decision by the United States to impose sanctions on judges of the International Criminal Court is not simply a disagreement over international law. It is an attack on the very institutions that underpin international cooperation and the rules-based order that all OSCE participating states rely upon. The OSCE was founded on the principle that security cannot be separated from respect for international law, human rights and justice. When judges carrying out their independent legal duties are threatened and actually sanctioned, it sends a dangerous message that powerful states can seek to intimidate those responsible for upholding international law. That approach weakens confidence in the international system. It undermines the principle that no state and no individual should be above the law. If judicial independence is compromised, then the foundation of trust between states is also weakened. Most OSCE countries have consistently supported the development of international legal institutions because they recognise that lasting peace depends on accountability, not impunity. Cooperation between our nations cannot rest solely on military strength or political influence. It must also be built on respect for agreed rules and independent institutions. The sanctions risk creating a precedent that could encourage other governments to target judges and courts whenever rulings become politically inconvenient. That would diminish respect for international justice across our region and beyond. Each of us here has a responsibility to defend the principles that maintained peace and stability in Europe for decades. We should reaffirm our commitment to judicial independence, international law and meaningful multilateral cooperation. The strength of the OSCE has always been its shared commitment to accountability and the peaceful resolution of disputes. Those principles deserve our protections today more than ever. So sanctions on ICC judges by Russia or the US are equally wrong. So as we meet here today in the home of the International Criminal Court, I would urge us all collectively to use our voice to condemn those sanctions and call for their immediate removal.
Thank you very much, Mr. Crow. Now I would like to give the floor to Mr. Rodriguez, and then I would like to pass the floor to Thanasis Papathanasis. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. Dear colleagues, the values and the principles of this organization are present in our words, in our actions, and in our decisions. And of course, everything that we discuss here has a certain territory. But today, when we call for one of our main concerns, that is security, we have to be present at borders, and the concept of borders are being we're losing their conception. So we have to be aware that the decision that we made on one side of the Europe has to go on, and we have to call our attention to the other parts of Europe. Even from the west and the south of Europe, they have to be present. More than that, when we talk about security, we have to talk about the other menaces that we have, like the cybersecurity menaces that we have nowadays. So what I wanted to call to your attention is that we have to have this present when we are discussing, like yesterday we did, about demographic issues that are important for the future and for the security of Europe, as for looking to the defense of the values that we have of human rights, liberty of speech, liberty of freedom in all situations. So it's important that we can call around everything that we have in our purposes and keep on discussing it, not only the discussions that we have of aggression, but of course the discussions that we have about development. And that's what I wanted to express here today, is that there are much more things that we have to discuss, more than the aggression, the development of all these territories, and the underwork of our organization. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Rodriguez. Now I would like to give the floor to Mr. Papathanasis, and then he will be followed by Mrs. Lily Galstian from Romania.
Mr. President, dear colleagues, international law and shared principles are not abstract concepts. They are the foundation upon which our collective security, peaceful coexistence, and cooperation within the OSCE area have been built. At a time of growing geopolitical instability, conflicts, revisionism, and challenges to fundamental rules, our commitment to international law is more necessary than ever. Respect for the sovereignty and territorial integrity of states, the peaceful settlement of disputes, the rejection of the threat or use of force, and the protection of human rights are not optional commitments. They are obligations that all of us must uphold consistently. The OSCE has a special mission to remind us that security is not only a military issue. It is also political, economic, social, and human. It is linked to democracy, the rule of law, the protection of minorities, the freedom of citizens, and the ability of states to cooperate on the basis of trust and mutual respect. Greece remains firmly committed to the principles of international law. We support dialogue, cooperation, and the peaceful resolution of disputes. We believe that security in our region cannot be based on fait accompli, threats or unilateral actions. It can only be based on respect for the common rules that we all accepted. Today, our message must be clear. The principles of the OSCE, the Charter of the United Nations, and international law remain the strongest foundation for peace, security, and cooperation. Our responsibility is to defend them not only in words, but also in practice. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I would like to pass the floor to Ms. Lily Galstian from Romania, and then she will be followed by Mrs. Sharice Abrama from Latvia.
Thank you. Dear colleagues, in the City of Justice, we are having a debate on one of the most discussed issues internationally. I have to be frank. Many in my country question the reputation of law and the credibility of the international order itself. But international law does not waken up overnight. It is weakened every time violations go unnoticed. Each time political convenience prevails over legal obligation, or we apply standards selectively. The growing distance between our commitments and the choices we make should concern us all. How can we claim to be defenders of democracy, security, and peace when we are surrounded by wars, when by conducting a policy of double standards we are refusing to acknowledge violations while the gap between the commitments and the reality is dramatically widening? It is not easy to speak about the shared values and principles in the geopolitical environment when we are witnessing the continuous erosion of these very values. The forced displacement of more than 120,000 indigenous Armenians from Nagorno-Karabakh did not happen because of the absence of international law. The aggression by Azerbaijan and the subsequent ethnic cleansing revealed the inadequacy of our collective response. Over the past 6 years, Azerbaijan has repeatedly ignored international conventions and resolutions, including ICG and IC courts binding decisions for the immediate lift of the blockade, decisions securing the safe return of the displaced native population of Nagorno-Karabakh, condemning the destruction of Armenian legacy, the ongoing sham trials of former political and military leaders of Artsakh. Dear colleagues, it's absolutely evident credibility is eroded when its principles and regulations are not defended and violations are met with silence. Let us reaffirm that international law is not negotiable and shared principles are not optional. And our principles are as strong as our willingness to defend them. Thank you.
Thank you, Lilith. And now I'm going to give the last three interventions, and then we're going to close the session. So first, as I said before, Ms. Abrama, and then we will close with Mr. Luc Berthold from Canada. So the last two speakers. So, Ms. Abrama, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Dear colleagues, today we must be honest. The principles of the Helsinki Final Act as a foundation for security and cooperation in Europe do not work by themselves if there is no real price for violating them. Russia's aggression against Ukraine, carried out with the support of the Belarusian regime, is a direct attack on the core principles of the OSCE. And this is not only a war against Ukraine's territory. It's violence against the Ukrainian people, the abduction and deportation of children, forced Russification, the destruction of civilian energy infrastructure, attacks on cities, and attempt to destroy Ukraine's statehood and identity. In Latvia and in the Baltic states as a whole, we also see the wider consequences of this war very clearly. We face hybrid attacks, cyber attacks, disinformation, the instrumentalization of migration, drone incidents, and threats to critical infrastructure in the Baltic Sea. These are not isolated incidents. They are part of the same aggressive policy carried out by different means. And that's why the OSCE participating states must be much more active. First, we must continue to document Russia's crimes, strengthen the work of the Moscow mechanism, and ensure accountability, including for the deportation of Ukrainian children. Second, we must increase political, economic, and sanctions pressure on Russia and on those who support its aggression. And third, we must strengthen our common resilience against cyber attacks, hybrid threats, and drone-related threats, also by using Ukraine's real battlefield experience. Latvia's position is clear. An aggressor cannot be appeased by concessions. Peace can only be achieved through strength, unity, and the consistent defense of our principles. We will continue to support Ukraine for as long as necessary until a just peace is achieved, Ukraine's territorial integrity is restored, and Ukraine wins. Thank you for attention.
Thank you very much, Ms. Abrama. And now we will close the session for today. And I would like to give the floor to Mr. Luc Berthold. You have the floor, Monsieur Berthold.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Je suis reconnaissant d'avoir l'opportunité de m'exprimer devant cette Assemblée à La Haye aujourd'hui. Vous savez, la guerre d'agression de la Russie en Ukraine, qui dure depuis maintenant plus de 4 ans, illustre jour après jour l'éclatement de l'ordre de sécurité européen. Je m'adresse à vous cet après-midi venant de l'autre côté de l'Atlantique en vous assurant que l'Europe n'est pas seule devant cette situation. Le Parlement canadien offre son soutien à l'Europe afin de participer à l'élaboration d'une nouvelle architecture de sécurité, notamment par son engagement vers ce forum et d'autres instances similaires telles que l'Assemblée parlementaire de l'OTAN. Je suis heureux de constater que nous menons aujourd'hui cette discussion sur l'avenir de l'ordre de sécurité européen. L'idée de la sécurité européenne avec la Russie est très peu envisageable, tant que Vladimir Poutine ne sera pas entièrement tenu responsable de ses actes. Cette Assemblée le rappelait l'an dernier à Porto en soulignant la nécessité de faire en sorte que la Fédération de Russie réponde des crimes internationaux commis en Ukraine. Encore cette année, la nécessité de tenir la Russie responsable de ses actes et d'assurer la sécurité européenne afin de garantir le respect de la souveraineté étatique de chacun est de plus en plus pressante. La création du tribunal spécial du Conseil de l'Europe pour le crime d'agression contre l'Ukraine marque une étape importante dans la quête de justice du peuple ukrainien. Ce tribunal vise à tenir responsables les dirigeants russes qui ont planifié, préparé et déclenché cette guerre illégale. Le Canada a joué un rôle actif dans les efforts internationaux ayant mené à sa mise en place. En appuyant ce tribunal, notre pays réaffirme son engagement vers la justice, la souveraineté de l'Ukraine et le respect du droit international. C'est un message clair. Les crimes d'agression ne doivent pas rester impunis. D'ailleurs, dès 2014, l'ancien premier ministre du Canada, Stephen Harper, comptait parmi les premiers dirigeants du G7 à adopter une position ferme contre l'agression russe. Premier chef du gouvernement du G7 à se rendre à Kiev après l'annexion de la Crimée, il s'est tenu debout en disant directement à Vladimir Poutine au sommet du G20 « You need to get out of Ukraine ». Le Canada continuera de se tenir aux côtés de l'Ukraine, de l'OSCE et de ceux qui défendent la liberté. Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Bravo.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur Berthold, pour cette dernière intervention et pour ces belles paroles. Je voudrais vous dire qu'il y a, there is still a list of 35 speakers waiting to intervene, so they will take the floor tomorrow morning. I would like to say thank you to the translators for the huge work, for the super task that they are doing, and don't forget that tonight, yes, a big applause for them, of course. Tonight we have a nice event on the beach, and the last bus is leaving at 7. So thank you very much for this time, for this afternoon in the plenary session, and see you tomorrow morning. Oh, and see you after that in the event. The session is closed.